All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are back for a second time in a row for a very special occasion, which we will get into. I'm sure you all know what it is by now. We're live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap the Mets versus Braves doubleheader that just occurred today, as well as all the other news and rumors and all that has been going on in the past few days. But before we do that, before we get into all the craziness, before we start celebrating, I want to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already for this very podcast that is now recorded live on Sundays and Thursdays following every single series of games, which will obviously start changing as we get into the postseason and off season, but we'll let you guys know when that does change. For those of you watching out on playback in the future and you want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, I want to let you guys know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, and every single one of your thoughts on this team as they come through. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show so we can pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. And it could be possible that maybe you will get a chance to talk with us live on here with your actual voices later on in the show. If we have time, most likely will. We most likely will extend this one for a special occasion. And of course, as for other social media, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which featured, not anymore for the rest of the season, Frank's post games, which I believe both of us combined for 162. Sometimes I had to fill in for you, but we grinded that thing out for the entire regular season. And it's titled The Mets Frankly Post Game. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of these new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day that they are recorded. So let's get into episode number 87, and what a special episode it is. We were here yesterday, and we were talking about everything coming down to this, and the Mets, they got the job done of what they needed to do. They got into the postseason, clinched it on their division rivals' field in Atlanta. It was oh so satisfying, let's just say that. To finally just somewhat get the monkey off their back and win one game in Atlanta in September. It was great. Now, Frank, like I said, with your post games, you just wrapped it up. Also, for those of you who follow us on TikTok, thank you for so much for the support on that series throughout the entire season. I think we did it all the way since game 2. We did not do it for opening day, but I think that we definitely grinded it out. We did not miss a single game whatsoever. There was one that went out there. But Frank, we finally wrap up the regular season. The Mets will continue to play baseball into the postseason, into October. How does it feel? I mean, it feels, I personally just think feels like a relief right now because it was quite a battle all season long.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely thank you to everyone who's watched us the whole way through all the TikToks and everything. I mean, I had to have gotten, what, at least 150 in me almost. I think I almost hit the 150 number. I mean, we stayed up to 1 in the morning, you and I, on the West Coast swings. I mean, it felt like a full season, to be honest, even though we were just there for a few minutes. But it definitely was a roller coaster season, and so fitting it ended in roller coaster fashion where you felt bad and then you felt good, and then you felt really bad, and you felt good, and then they pull it off. So it definitely is a crazy ending to a crazy season. But like you said, there is that sense of relief. Just the fact that they did get in. Now, whatever happens, happens. We're going to get into that. We're going to break it down and try to plan it out. But I think just getting here, it definitely feels good because there was no guarantee. I actually went back and watched a little bit of the stream we did when they made the playoffs in 2022, the last game, like right before the day before the Padres series. And we weren't too thrilled because they had that division lead for so long. They had clinched in advance, didn't get the division, and just kind of stumbled their way in, just kind of got there by default. And we were like, we don't really feel too good going just the way it happened. But this year, I feel like with the comeback that they made and all the contributors that they had, and you didn't necessarily expect them to make it when it was all said and done. We definitely had our doubts at multiple points during the season, especially in May and April. But for them to actually get there and win a game in Atlanta against Schwellenbach, didn't necessarily know that was going to happen, because we've talked about so many times they've had opportunities to win a game in Atlanta multiple times in their history, have been able to get it done, but they did it today, and really that's what matters. So I'm proud that they're able to do it. I'm obviously very happy they're able to do it, and this is what we want as content creators. More Mets baseball means more content, so that means that now we get to go into overdrive, like you said, pre-games, post-games, everything. We're just going to keep going. So it definitely is just a really great time right now.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it just feels good to finally. It seems like you just, like I said, just squashing a lot of, I don't know, just like demons, let's just say. I mean, let's just say right now, even though the Braves finished ahead of us, even though they got the tiebreaker, even though they still will be in the playoffs, and we know that they'll be back next year, like we have said multiple times before, it was nice to see the Mets finally flip the script of, well, we finally got one in Atlanta. We finally got the job done. We finally did what we needed to do by just clinching the wild card in Atlanta, and they did their thing. Now, Caution coming in 4 times in a row now, $10. Really appreciate that from Caution. Thank you so much. That is a 4-peat now. Has any team ever went 4 in a row? I don't think so, unless it's like college. I don't know, maybe like the UConn women's basketball. I mean, he continues his streak, Caution. And again, we definitely have some plans to like up some like reward systems during the off season regarding donors, regarding subscribers, things like that. We definitely want to upgrade the experience of the live show a little bit. During the middle of the season, we started off the live show for the podcast again. So it was kind of like a quick turnaround for it. So then we'll kind of establish everything that we do throughout every episode. And then the 2025 season will definitely be maybe a little bit more of a different experience. We're gonna definitely experiment with a segment that I hope to do every single week, but we'll see what is in store for that. But as for right now, it just feels great that the Mets got the job done, because there were a lot of signs, especially this week, even though permitting any of these obstacles that they had to overcome with, of course, the hurricane and everything, the delay, the doubleheader that had to be moved to a day that most likely they should have been a off day for every single team except the Mets and Braves. They definitely persevered through that, and it was definitely good to see that they finally went through it all, and and going through 162 games, and winning it at game 161. It's definitely nerve-wracking for the fan base. Let's just say that. It was a tough ride. It was an up and down season. There were so many twists and turns, lots of adversity they had to face, but there was also a lot of good. And I will say one thing that you can't forget is that this team at one point was 0-5. This team started off 0-5. This team was 11 games under 500 at the end of May. And they fought
and trailing so many teams. And trailing so many teams.
And they
everybody
all the way back.
I think they were third to last, wasn't it? I think it was just like Miami and Colorado were like the only 2 teams behind them.
Yeah. For those of you see on our screen, I forgot to actually mention, Andrew will be here. He's just resetting some of his internet. He's having some tough times with that, so he'll be here at one point. But
Missouri connection, what could you do?
Yeah, what can you do? I mean, that is just a really fucked up state. I don't know what to tell you. There goes our entire Missouri demographic. But you know what? It was fun while it lasted.
We love
Andrew,
them,
you good now?
All of the Missouri people.
Possibly. Hopefully we're good now.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. Good to have you back. And we're back for a really good set of news. The Mets have clinched. What are your thoughts? You can add in. Try to keep the stupidity at a minimum.
Well, no, we're popping.
Okay,
I'm
go
already
ahead.
I'm already 2 Jaeger bombs in, celebratory Jaeger bombs in. We're done. Again, what a story! Again, of course, I take a flight today, and of course, I have to watch this first game and have to listen to the ESPN broadcast. Completely suck off Spencer Swellenbach. But yeah, but of course, I get off the plane right as Brandon Nimmo hits a 2-run homer, and I leave the airport, and of course, Edwin Diaz aside. No. But again, it's what the kind of this game represented the season. God awful start. The middle you peaked, a little slip off, and then obviously you get the MVP that's gonna get robbed by a 50-50 senpai dude. He does this every year. Can we just give it to the guy who actually played? Is actually the most valuable, not the best numbers, not the best baseball savant page. Just give him the Hank Aaron Award. But no, we got to give it to Jesus Christ himself and Shohei Ohtani in the next 75 MVPs that he plays. But again, from where this team was April 1st and how the Milwaukee Brewers series 0-5, 11 games under, we're all firing everybody, killing everybody. We're killing animals. We're bringing up kids. It doesn't matter. To now, we're sitting here in a playoff spot, going to the playoffs. I mean, again, the expectations we've talked throughout the stream, the streams throughout the rest of the month, the expectations has changed. But the minimum requirement that we thought this year, especially with that second half, was to get in the postseason. And the fact that they accomplished that in Atlanta, not just, in Milwaukee or, at home at Citi Field. They went in, played whatever the hell the greatest game of the year, the most hard attack, however version you want to say that game was, to come out with the victory in Atlanta, and you're celebrating in Truist Park. It means a lot, and again, now we have to get on a plane, fly to Milwaukee with no closer, no setup man to play a playoff game tomorrow. Of course, not maybe the greatest situation, but again, especially from where this team was in April into May, if you would have told me back then when we were talking about, we got to trade this guy, and this guy, Pete Alonso's still fat, which he still is, but to sit in a situation where we're going to the playoffs, we're in the crapshoot, and this isn't like football playoffs where the best teams always win. And I guess we'll talk about, maybe we'll save it for tomorrow for the pregame, but like that game, that's a type of team win that you go on that miracle October run. And yeah, is there a world where they just get swept? Sure. But that type of win in that building can propel this team. And yes, do they have the sexiest names on paper? No. But hell, neither did the Arizona Diamondbacks. And they got to a World Series. Yes, they lost, whatever. So again, the DVD is going to be amazing. Hell, you can just do a DVD just on a wild card berth. But if this is the beginning of a run, and you can't tell me that especially that win, because how many times in that building that same game is played, how many times did the Mets win that game? 98, lose 98 out of 100 times? That being one of the two
I'd say
times.
100 out of 100. I'd say 100 out of 100.
Yeah. Again, especially, Diaz, the guy had to pitch him. But yes, just to be able to, again, get it done in Atlanta. Tonight, it's all about enjoying and celebrating. Tomorrow, we can get into, more stressful ball games, shorthanded. That's tomorrow's problem. Tonight, again, celebratory Jaeger bombs, pop bottles, grab, if you got a woman, have some good sex. It's all a celebratory night. And let's go, Mets.
Okay, no, I'm not even gonna, I can't fix this shit in post because it'll just go up. It's like there's nothing I can do about it. So you know what? I'm just gonna let it flow. But other than that, I mean, again, this we just know has been just a ridiculous roller coaster of a season. And I think that Andrew put it simple, and I think the broadcast also on SSY put it simple as to where this type of game continued to be just a representation of what this season has been. And it has been a full-on roller coaster, but you still continue to see these tides turning towards the Mets. It's coming up a little bit more orange and blue than it used to. It's not there yet. There's still some flaws. There's still some pieces that they do need to improve on going forward, and they're not perfect as of right now. But like we have said, any team that gets hot at the right time, those are the teams that make a deep run into the postseason. We saw the Mets get very, very hot towards the end in 2015 and make it a run all the way to the World Series. Anything can happen in postseason baseball. The Mets have pieces that could possibly make a deep run, but they just have to fall into place. And we've talked about pieces falling into place throughout the entire season, where we were counting on from a lot of one-year deals of these guys bouncing back, having better years than they had before. A lot of question marks as to where let's wait and see. Let's see what happens. Maybe this is a playoff contender. Maybe it's not. And at one point, Mets were struggling. And we were talking about possibly selling at the end of May. I know that we've talked about the team meeting, but in Fantasyland, we can obviously bring up Grimace and the "Oh My God" song and all of the craziness that has been packed into this 162 game season. At the end of the day, the Mets got the job done. And I think that all we can really say is, even though there's more stress to come, and we know that they don't get a single day of rest, they got a game of rest, some of the players, some of them didn't. We just know that this team now has a chance. They got to the next stage. And hopefully, and I'm hoping that this is not an once every 5-year occurrence. I'm hoping that this is every year. I'm hoping we do continue to have that sustainable outlook that the Brewers did have under Stearns. And with this financial flexibility, maybe push it to the next level. And I hope that we see that in the future. There's tons of things down the line to be excited about. But right now, like Andrew said, we're popping champagne. This is a celebration of 162 games of fight that this team showed throughout an entire roller coaster season. And all I can say is that, yes, it's been quite a journey, but it just has begun. Into the postseason we go. October baseball hopefully will be played in Queens. We don't know yet because they will have to play 3 games in Milwaukee, which we will get into, of course. But let's get into these games that they played today as a doubleheader in Atlanta. And one of them had more emphasis than the other in Mets land. Now, from this doubleheader, Tyler McGill got the start in game 1. Made 2 major mistakes, but he was solid for the most part. 5 2/3 innings. Gave up 8 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. The Mets offense would get carved up by Spencer Schwellenbach once again for 7 innings, but once he came out of the game after Tyrone Taylor knocked him out with a leadoff double, the Mets fired back down 3-0. Alvarez would trade places with Taylor to get the Mets on the board. Lindor would make it a 1-run game and an RBI single. Jose Iglesias would tie the game on an RBI single. Mark Vientos would give the Mets the lead on a sacrifice fly. And Brandon Nimmo would add the 5th and 6th runs on a monstrous 2-run shot to make it 6-3. But we all knew that the Braves would not go down quietly. Phil Maton would come on in the 8th and struggle. Just getting 1 out, Edwin Diaz would come on with 2 runners on and would completely melt down, walking 2, surrendering the tying and go-ahead runs on a bases-clearing double by Ozzie Albies, and the Mets would go into the top of the 9th down 7-6. Starling Marte would get a 1-out single, setting up the MVP candidate Francisco Lindor, blasting a massive 2-run homer to right center to give the Mets the lead. Edwin Diaz would come right back out for the 9th to finish this game, and he would do so to secure the Mets' 11th postseason berth in franchise history on game 161. Now, game 2, Joey Lucchesi would get recalled to make a spot start in place of Luis Severino to move him to the playoff rotation, and he was pretty good. He walked 4, he struck out 5 in 6 innings of 1-run ball. Can't really complain. With the Mets already in the postseason, Carlos Mendoza would rest most of the Mets' key players. Nimmo and Alonso would both get hits in this game. So would Jose Iglesias. But that was pretty much about it, as the Braves would go on to win 3-0 and clinch the second wild card, where they will be playing the Padres, and the Mets would end off the season 89-73, heading into the postseason to face the Brewers back in Milwaukee, traveling right back for another trip from Atlanta to Milwaukee to Atlanta back to Milwaukee in a set of 4 days, with Game 1 starting tomorrow night. Now, we will get into the postseason stuff tomorrow. As we said, we're going to have a pregame show for all the pregame coverage, all the keys to those games. But right now, we are talking about what happened in Atlanta today. And let's just say it was quite a roller coaster of emotions. You can say that again. I'm pretty sure we have said that in every single episode of this podcast. That's just basically what the season has been. Just an outright slug battle with the Atlanta Braves, which you don't really want to get into. Let's just say that, because they will win. But at the end of the day, the Mets got the win. They scored more runs than the other team, which is what you need to do to win. A higher score than the other opponent. That's what the great genius Josh McDaniels told me when he was the Raiders coach. And we take that to our graves. It's true. The main takeaways from this doubleheader, let's just say, I feel like the best thing that we can do is just recap that first game. The second game, who gives a real rat's ass, because it does not matter. But in that first game, an absolute roller coaster, let's just say that. Lots of demons popped up, but the Mets got the upper hand for the first time, and you feel like forever. So, Frank, I'll go to you. If you want to just give your small little recap from what you saw. If you guys want to hear his instant reactions, go to our TikTok, of course, as we said. But what do you think, Frank, now dissecting it a few hours later?
Yeah, I mean, it still doesn't feel real just because of really the roller coaster you're on. Because what I said in the recap is knowing that the second game, whoever won the first game was not really going to try in the second game. And knowing that you might not face Chris Sale if they win the first game, you weren't going to face him regardless because back spasms. But as the Mets fell behind early and it's 2-0, 3-0, and they're going to Brazaban and Ottavino, I'm like, all right, I guess they're just kind of looking at it as, you know what, we lost this game, we have a really good chance to win the next game, and you just kind of see what happens. But they did have some opportunities early. I mean, you had guys in scoring position. You had Francisco Alvarez in scoring position. You had Tyrone Taylor in scoring position. And it came down to Bader. And we talked about our lineups yesterday about, who we'd put out there. I said no Bader. You said Bader for defense. And I understood the decision, especially considering the struggles of some other guys like Jesse Winker, and JD Martinez still in the lineup. I understood that, and I want to talk about Jesse Winker later because he didn't appear in either game, so they were telling the broadcast maybe something's going on with him. So if you don't have Winker for whatever reason, then all right, fine, you're going to put Bader out there. And he comes up early in the game, and it was so early, there was already a couple outs. I understand letting him swing the bat there, even if it was first pitch. I actually thought the Mets should have swung first pitch more. I tweeted that, but JD Martinez, his first pitch of that bat, he watched one right down the middle. And then Lindor, he saw a curveball down the middle later on, his second at bat. So I actually liked them being more aggressive with Schwellenbach because he was getting ahead every time. Every account was 0-1. So if you know he's throwing first pitch strike, you should be ready, because what happens is you watch first pitch strike and then you chase the next one, and now you're down 0-2, and he's got 6 weapons he could just kill you with. So I didn't mind Bader swinging first pitch. He lines out. But then that second at bat, when now you're in the middle innings and you have 2 runners in scoring position, that's where I would have made a switch. I mean, Marte ended up having a really nice game, pinch hitting later on, getting 2 hits. So you definitely could have gone him there. If Winker was available, could have used him, could have went Acuna. I just felt that the Mets had 3 better options that they could have went to over Bader in that situation, and they stuck with him, and he doesn't come through. So I found that really, really interesting, especially considering that he hasn't been playing much lately. I mean, Tyrone Taylor has been the guy starting in center field this past week. So Mendoza has already told you that overall their confidence isn't too high on Harrison Bader. And the couple things that bothered me is, number one, Bader, he got a lot of nice hits in the first half. I'm not going to take that away from him. I'm not going to say that it didn't happen, because it did. I mean, when you come down to this point in the season, every win mattered. And he was definitely a big part of a lot of their first half wins and getting hits with runners in scoring position. But when he's swinging such a cold bat right now in the second half in September, and we look at his numbers, he just got worse and worse by the month as the season went on. I don't know if I love having him swing the bat there when he's already cold. And then it's one thing if you're in a slump, but then the other thing is that he doesn't have a track record of being a good offensive player. This is now 3 straight seasons where he finished below league average offensively. So between him not being that great of a proven hitter to begin with, being in a slump, having better options available, I just thought that was a good time to pinch hit. He doesn't come through. So later on, now you have another chance. And for the Braves, this is the first time Schwellenbach pitched into the 8th inning. He had not gone more than 7, but his pitch count was so reasonable, and he had thrown over 100 earlier in the year. And the way he's dominated the Mets this season, they want to save up their bullpen maybe for the playoffs and what have you. I understood their decision to have Schwellenbach go back out for the 8th inning. But then the Mets started to get it going. And so everyone talks so much about like Lindor's big home run they hit later on, which was maybe it definitely is one of the biggest hits in Mets history, don't get me wrong. But what also was big about Lindor is he was part of the first comeback when they were facing Schwellenbach and they were down 3-0. Him and Iglesias and all those guys got it going. That set things up for the Vientos sac fly and Nimmo to hit that big home run the first go round. So then his second time up, then he does it again. So Lindor was part of both comebacks that they made late in that game. So just so much credit goes to him. And we've talked so much about him deserving to be an MVP finalist for sure with the season he's had. So many big moments. So I just can't give him enough credit. And same goes for Iglesias. I talked about when he first got here, we had the OMG craze, like, oh, he's hitting so well. But is that going to stick? And sure enough, it got even better as he finishes the year batting 340, 21-game hitting streak. So it stuck. We were like, oh, maybe it's going to come down. Like, it's going to balance out. He's just swinging a hot bat right now. Everything will just kind of fizzle out. And that did not happen. I mean, he really stepped up. McNeil got hurt. Didn't matter because Iglesias played so well. So, obviously a ton of credit goes to him. Vientos finishes off his strong season. Another guy that we were like, oh, he got up to a great start. Is that going to stick? It did. So a lot of those guys stepping up. And then Nimmo getting the big hit, being a leader. That was great. Pete never stepped up. But other than that, it's like you saw a lot of the things that got you there in the first place. And a lot of that stuff had to happen again in order to win this tough game. And they were able to do that. And, we'll get to the Diaz stuff later on. But that was just how I felt as they got the lead both times.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a roller coaster game. And I feel like there were some lack of strategy towards the beginning against a guy like Schwellenbach, who we know has destroyed the Mets. It seemed like the Mets needed to up some kind of different plan. And I just continue to see the same thing over and over and over against this guy. And I'm like, okay, are they actually going to break through? Are they going to do anything against him? And they didn't end up doing anything. And it took him to come out of the game for the Mets to actually get going. We've talked about this Mets offense. I've said it so many times. This offense has 2 different levels. It's 0 or 100. They saw 0 against Schwellenbach and 100 once he came out. And the main reason as to why I get very, very concerned about this offense is because you need somebody to turn on that switch. You need somebody to spark it up. And I don't think that Tyrone Taylor is the type of player where he's going to do it consistently, but he's done it many, many times this year. And I would say that Tyrone Taylor is definitely one of the unspoken heroes of this team when you're talking about the margins of how they have won games. He's definitely not in the conversation of, where Francisco Lindor is and where Mark Vientos is, but Tyrone Taylor has been a huge contributor to this team as the 4th outfielder since. Definitely a lot of good value, not to mention the Mets also have him here through I think 2027, I'm pretty sure, which is pretty cool to see, which is pretty cool detail. But as for what you saw from this game, I know that we want to kind of leave those last 2 innings to a different other discussion because it did not look good for Edwin Diaz. But the full-on takeaways of what you liked, what you disliked, Andrew, I'll go to you. What tangent do you want to bring us to now?
I mean, there's a billion. I could take this 1,000 different spots. But again, if we're going to talk about Diaz in the next segment, I mean, again, like you said, Tyrone Taylor, but Francisco Alvarez, productive again, like another RBI hit in that rally. I mean, again, it's it's pathetic that, again, it takes Spencer Schwellenbach to be, the next incarnation of just, all right, he's going to be the next guy every fifth day. He's just going to dome us anytime we face. Still, no, still, is it just trying to load it out? Am I still here?
Yeah, Frank loaded out.
Okay, cool. To go up against Schwellenbach, again, you've seen all year, they've not been able to hit, and you're sitting there watching them just mow them down, and getting ahead 0-1 every single AB, it seemed like. It was just, every count was up 0-1, 0-2, and then he would throw that slider, and then everybody's just flailing at it. And then you see Ozzy Albies, of course, pokes one out of here. And Tyler McGill overall wasn't horrific. Again, it's his best, it's not his greatest start he's ever had, but it was good enough in the spot for him to produce. And again, he makes the mistake to Albies, it's 2-0, and then they tack on the other one. They take on an extra run. But overall, again, he was fine in his start. I mean, Adam Ottavino threw a 0 in 2024, so you just say, thank you, get ready to learn Chinese, buddy. But again, you go back to that rally, and as soon as Schwellenbach's off, the bomb went off, and this team decided to, wake the hell up. And again, you have your MVP doing things, and you're getting production. Again, the whole lineup. But again, all it took was getting rid of the guy that, continues to dominate. But it's not just, yes, Lindor's going to get all the flowers that he deserves. But Nimmo hitting, pimping, which, can we talk about Brandon Nimmo real quick? The amount of sass that was in this game one for Brandon Nimmo. I don't know if you guys, it was all over Twitter about Michael Harris doing the ass slapping thing in the dugout. I don't think, I saw this on Twitter. Did you see Nimmo taking a peek at Harris rounding second? That there was a picture of him rounding second staring at Michael Harris. So for a good Christian boy, first of all,
wrestling, dude.
First of all, it's a good Christian boy bat flipping. Brandon Nimmo don't do that. Took 26 seconds to round the bases.
New York for quite a while.
No. Brandon Nimmo is a good Christian boy. He runs these, as of the late Pete Rose. That's who he is. He's a hustle guy. The fact that he's sitting there bat flipping and took 26 seconds to round the bases for some, again, and to be, everyone wants to name Lindor the captain, rightfully so. He's the best player on the team. The true captain of this team is Brandon Nimmo, because who was the guy they interviewed right after? Who did Gelbs go to first? Brandon Nimmo. Who's the guy that kind of brought the fans, in that last homestand? Brandon Nimmo. And again, we need him to be the productive guy that he needs him to be, because we all know that damn first baseman just never going to do anything. He's just going to go into hibernation in the free agency and just go enjoy Cleveland, Chicago, Houston. Goodbye. But again, we're being positive. JD Martinez got another hit, so we like that. But again, it's an overall team effort. Again, you don't like that it has to come in the 8th inning when you're down to your last 6 outs. Again, you'd like the team to start on time and not have to pull out some absolute miracles to win games. It'd be nice. But again, with going into the playoffs, those are how these games are going to be. It's not going to be like, oh, they're just slamming them 7-0. Like, no, this is, and they've played playoff games every single night the last week. It's a good sign. And again, you're starting to see, Alvarez being productive. Nimmo can get going. It shows how deep this lineup can be if everyone's going the right way. But again, you hope that they would start early and not, and now you're going up against the best pitchers for everybody. So again, you're facing an ace every night, and for everybody else who's going to have a rested bullpen, us in Atlanta aren't, but again, you're going to have, in Milwaukee having a day of rest where they have fully guys. So again, to be able to just see, and beat up on Raisel Iglesias, who a guy who always seems to terrorize the Mets as well. So again, to getting those runs after the fact. So it's impressive, but again, you just wish, can we not do this every game where, like, you're getting no hit or shut out through 7, and then you're like, you know what, let's just wake up, like you said, open the box, the Godzilla's coming out, and they just start destroying everything. Where the hell was that, the first 7 innings of the game? Can you just please start on time?
Yeah, I mean, it would just be nice to see somewhat of that consistency, because it's really hard to, like, cut things off and bring in some life when, through like 7 or 8 innings, you're not doing anything. There's little room for error. They still find a way to get it done. This team, there's been tons of times where they could have quit, and they showed that they definitely have some fight left in them. Caution coming in, our high donor here, who's apparently like the richest man in the world, giving us all this money, saying I wouldn't mess with Nimmo. He looks like a choir boy that can mess you up if you disrespect him. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he definitely probably has some of that edge to him. I don't know, but I don't know him personally. Unlike somebody else who on this panel probably knows him a little bit better than us, but we can move on. No, you don't. No, you guys aren't buddies anymore.
Well, yeah, occasional Merry Christmas.
Nice, very very nice. But other than that, now I mean we can talk about Edwin Diaz here because obviously we know that Edwin Diaz is a really really big part to this team no matter what. He's your $102 million closer, and they're going to rely on him a lot in this postseason if they make a deep run, no matter what. It was an absolute disaster in that 8th inning. It was not good. And obviously, you could imagine how I was feeling, obviously, with that. That was pretty disappointing. But then he comes back out in the 9th, and he finishes the game. But I think that, in regards to just the whole usage of Diaz, it's been a lot. Frank, what do you think about this? I know you were outraged and you were ready to start punching holes into the wall. But this is, the end of the season, so it could be concerning, but I mean, it is what it is. The Braves are a good team. Let's not forget that. But, there was definitely some angst in those last 2 innings regarding Edwin Diaz. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, yesterday he comes into a 5-0 ball game and he throws the 25 pitches, and there's a couple theories of thought, so to speak. So with Diaz, we've talked about that he's someone who pitches better with more work. So you wanted to have him pitch yesterday because he hadn't pitched in a week. Now, I don't know if 25 pitches is exactly what I had in mind. I would like something a little less, maybe like 20 max, maybe like 18 or so, 17. This way you don't tire him out too much before the next game against Atlanta, especially if you had the intention of him going more than 1 inning the following night. I feel like it says a lot, though, about the concerns of the other guys in the bullpen, because I don't think this is just an Edwin Diaz conversation because of the decision making that happened. So things start off with Maton, who comes in for a 3rd straight game, which is something that he has not done with the Mets yet. So I thought that was very interesting that they went to Maton. And it's like, you're ready to use Brosban in this game. You're ready to use Ottavino in this game. And we saw Ryan Stanek warming up for the 9th. So you thought that he was going to be next man up if he was going to come in. I mean, Jeremy Hefner told Diaz that Mendoza was going to take him out after the 8th. But one of the other guys that 2 guys that just kind of fall to the wayside here is number 1, Reed Garrett, which I don't blame him. I've been clear. I don't trust him in a big spot. His control scares me too much. Hanging stuff over the plate, walks, can't trust it. Wild pitches, things like that. The other guy, though, who did come up for the Mets when Diaz was down and Diaz was suspended was Jose Budo, who I feel like he has his control issues, no doubt. He walks too many batters, but I feel like he hasn't really gotten much work lately, especially in the big spots. I feel like they have not been going to him nearly as much as they were before. So I thought that maybe going to Budo up 3 runs in the 8th inning instead of Maton a 3rd day in a row, and Maton had to work multiple innings 2 days ago. I feel like that would have been maybe a different option they could have went. Maybe Budo gets you more out so that Diaz doesn't have to go 40 pitches and with men on base and things like that. So that was just me. So then we talked about on our stream yesterday that Diaz's velocity was down. And we said, you know what? Maybe that's by design. Maybe he wasn't going all out because he knew he had a pitch in Atlanta. Maybe both games a doubleheader. Maybe he wasn't giving his full velocity. Then he comes in today, and his velocity is just the same, if not worse at some points. I think we're still like a 94 at one point in the inning. So the velocity is still down. And you're like, okay, well, where is his health at then if the velocity is still down? The other issue you had is that his command was not there. He was falling behind in counts, walking batters. So he didn't have feel for many of his pitches, and he's putting himself in a really bad spot, loading up the bases. And I just feel that if you want Diaz to go multiple innings, multiple days in a row, all this stuff, fine, if he has his stuff. But if he is clearly struggling, I feel like that is a time when you go to another pitcher and say, listen, maybe you have it today, because clearly this guy does not. And I feel like we've heard a lot about Edwin Diaz's mental makeup. Now, if you remember, when they were in Miami and they had that big game he blew against Josh Bell, and he was in a rough stretch at that time. He had blown a few saves. He was crying in the locker room. So this is a guy that, you know what, he could get rattled easily. And if all of a sudden he had this thing with Arizona and San Diego, he blew back-to-back big games, and then Mendoza went back out there. So he's someone that, like, I feel like once he blows it once, I'm afraid he could blow it again, because I just think that mental aspect of it really takes a toll on you. So they said they were going to take him out, and he was very adamant he's not coming out. He's going to get it done. He's going to get it done. And Mendoza is a player's manager. It wasn't probably what the computer said. It probably wasn't what the book said. But he said, you know what? This is my guy that we're paying a lot of money. I've trusted him a lot in the past. I'm going to give him a chance. So Diaz comes out there for the ninth inning. And once again, there are guys on. And he's falling behind in the counts. And Stanek is warming up. When the guy got on and Mendoza came out, I said, okay, he's going to bring in Stanek. He's just going to throw Stanek into the fire. But no, he has a mound visit with Diaz. And listen, I don't know what they said. I feel like Mendoza said, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to trust you. But if you give up one more base run, I have to take you out. And Diaz said, well, that ain't going to happen. So then he comes through, gets the last couple outs, and then ball game over. So he got very lucky that Lindor and Martin, these guys bailed him out in the top half of the inning, or else this could have been a Mets loss. He might have not had another opportunity to save this ball game if the Mets don't make that comeback. So I feel that overall it does worry me going forward, because even though he blew the game and everything like that, you still had him go 40 pitches today after going 25 yesterday. And I think they said the last time he did 40 pitches was in 2018. So he had never even done this as a Met. Last time he did it was in Seattle. So I feel like to ask that much the day before a playoff series, instead of going to anybody else, that kind of gives me more long-term worries as far as, okay, well then what is the game plan for the first game against the Brewers? Because I don't think Maton's going to go 4 days in a row. I could see Diaz working, but I don't know about multiple innings. So like we've always said, it comes down to somebody else stepping up. And I know we're going to talk about Carson's top 5 guys who shouldn't make it. And I'm sure there's going to be relievers in there. So we'll have that conversation later on the show. But I feel like this is kind of something that we've talked about before, where not trusting certain relievers leads to overworking your good ones. And that's kind of where they're at right now with Maton and Diaz, where they're just asking them to do everything. And that could only get you so far. But I understand it because of the struggles everyone else has had.
Yeah, obviously, I understand what you're talking about with the bullpen, of course, with the usage and the trust what they have in the rest of these pieces, because Edwin Diaz, whether he has had these struggles or not, he's on a different level compared to anybody else in that bullpen. When he's at his best, he's one of the best in all of the game, and that is a true fact. That's why he was paid like it. Now, I'm personally not worried about the workload, mainly because they have saved these bullets throughout the entire season for him. And that's why they still have it, and he can still go out there. I personally loved that he said, don't take me out, and he stayed in there and got the job done. Now, if he stayed in there, didn't get the job done, we probably would be talking about a different situation here. But the fact that Diaz didn't let any of these events, let these bad results, because he knows that he's a good pitcher when it comes to it, and he was able to work through it. And though he did not have his best stuff, but he knows that at his, 75th percentile, 50th, that he still can be somewhat effective. All of it is mental. And that's the main reason as to why we always have this conversation with Edwin Diaz when he does have a blow up, when he does not pitch well. We've always talked about this. I've always talked about it, having fully confidence in Edwin Diaz 100% no matter what. Get him out there in the 9th, get him out there in the 8th, let him pitch in those high leverage situations. There's nobody I trust more than Edwin Diaz out there. That will remain to be true. But the only thing that I don't have confidence is his confidence, his mental makeup, because he lets all of these things get to him. Now, the fact that you saw this where he was like, okay, well, guess what? I'm not going to let this get to me. This has happened way too many times before. We all know about 2019. We all know about his entire Mets tenure. He's had quite a few blowups in and out. And a lot of people have gone the full back and forth 360 wire with him. I'm done with him. I want him gone. He's the greatest pitcher of all time. He's the worst pitcher of all time. Pay him, don't pay him, trade him, get rid of him, DFA him. We've gone through all of that. So the fact that we'll continue to have that roller coaster, and in the end, we know that he has elite stuff. We know that he has top-notch stuff. Yes, he was not sharp, and that was the main reason as to why the Mets were behind after Edwin Diaz came out of the game in the 8th. But the fact that we saw Edwin Diaz take the initiative, basically the full verbatim, Jeremy Hefner basically telling Edwin Diaz, this is from Tim Britton, by the way, Jeremy Hefner told Edwin Diaz that he was done after the 8th. When Francisco Lindor gave the Mets the lead back, Diaz went to Carlos Mendoza. He said, I'm going back out. I don't care what you say. I'm going back out. I got this shit. That is my $102 million closer. That is the guy that we paid for. He went back out there and he got the job done. Now, yes, you probably will not have him available for game 1. It is possible. Do you probably have to rely on most likely Luis Severino going 6 or 7 innings? Yes. You probably will have to go to Budo for maybe 2. It's possible to piece that together. If you have a blow up, you might have to put in some of the mop ups and then, try to win game 2. But obviously, the Mets had to win that game. They came back. It was a close game. They were winning, and they had to use the bullets. Yes, pitching, 65 pitches in the last 2 days. It's concerning. I get it. But I think that at the end of the day, they put all of their chips in. They wasted they had all these bullets throughout the entire season because okay, he's coming back from injury. He got injured during the season for a second. He was suspended. There wasn't much of a workload. We've talked about Reed Garrett's workload. They saved these bullets. They're able to use them now when they need them most. And this is your $102 million relief. Like I've said, let him go. Let him pitch. I'm so done with this. He has a bad outing, get rid of him. I'm so done with this. He has a good outing, elevate him. I'm done with it. We know how good he is. Sometimes he'll have blowups. Sometimes he won't. He just has to get back on that horse, shall we say. You know what I mean? I think that at the end of the day, he just can't let that drone over him. And that's really hard to do when you play in a New York market. It is. It's really hard. But at the end of the day, they got the job done. Now, listen, I'm the passionate Diaz fan. Andrew, you can add in, of course, of what you want to say. I don't want to completely take over the show, just talking about Edwin Diaz because it will just never end. But Andrew, I'll go to you of your thoughts of going on with Edwin Diaz, of that situation. Did you like him taking the initiative and telling Jeremy Hefner to fuck off? What did you think?
I mean, I understand, again, you had to win game 1, and especially when they got the lead back. If you're telling me, who do I trust, especially with Matt Olson leading off, and I think that was, for me, the most important batter in that inning, in that bottom of the ninth, is who do I trust more not to give up a solo shot to Matt Olson to tie this game? And if you're telling me it's Edwin Diaz on his last leg, on no stamina, or Ryan Stanek, yes, has pitched better in September, don't get me wrong, I'm still trusting the guy that so-and-so paid. I'm not saying his name because we have an actual Bobo now, but paid a lot of money for. Yes, again, him throwing 20-plus pitches yesterday and then coming back today, it's a big negative to not have your closer, especially in playoff games. That it's going to be close, so we're going to have a situation where most likely, potentially, Reed Garrett might have to save a game tomorrow night if we have a lead going in the ninth inning tomorrow night. So, but yet, you still had to win today to have a tomorrow night. So, I agree with the move. And yes, has this whole thing been fucked and the Mets are screwed because they don't have the day off like everybody else? Yeah. To reset their pen, you're going to go into a team that you've not played well against, but, and now you're going out, your 2 best setup man, your top setup guy and closer, wiped out completely in a best-of-3 series. It sucks, but I do appreciate that, again, Mendoza went back out there, and even with the mound visit, I literally got out of the airport, I'm watching the game, and as soon as okay, there's a single, and especially with Diaz not being able to hold runners, Eli White was running all over him, so I'm thinking, all right, go to Stanek, hold him at first, and again, now that you got Olson to pop up that first pitch, Razor Ramon versus Stanek, okay, whatever. But then again, Mendoza giving him another say, do it. You could, and obviously Diaz saying, I want this shit. Carlos come out and say, you want this shit? Finish this shit. And him getting the job done. But yes, it sucks that you had to burn him completely. And now you're negative for tomorrow. But again, you had to have this game to have tomorrow. So I don't love it because again, you're going in shorthanded. But again, it's that's the value of getting into the playoffs. You needed the game, and we saw what happened in game 2, which we don't really give a shit about. But again, who knows? Who knows? Let's say if the Braves do win, and let's say Stanek comes in, gives up a 2-run homer, they lose game 1. We don't know what happens in game 2. So you had to nail it down. He nails it down you go in with your best. You live and die by your best, and that's what they did. Again, you take the win, and you just pray the offense shows up tomorrow.
It just comes to show that the Mets really have a different type of thought process when it comes to it. And this is what I love about Carlos Mendoza as a manager. He's so in the now. He's not trying to plan ahead. He's not trying to plan behind. He is trying to win the game right now. Obviously, there's limits when it's like, okay, well, they're down 11-1. Now we can save some arms for the next day. But when it comes to like these little, okay, we're down by 1 run. Let's bring in somebody that can strike somebody out. Let's bring in this. Let's bring in that. That's where he comes in very hands-on. And I feel like there's also this human element that he also can add as to where, yes, he was a player at one point. That doesn't really mean much because he was not in the league for that long. But he also kind of has that connection to these players as to where, he wants to know how they're doing before he makes the decision, which I think is good. Do I want this to be a full-on player-run team? No, but also Carlos Mendoza at the end of the day, he has a lot of talent on this team around him, and Carlos Mendoza, he's also learning on the job as well. This is his first year as a Major League manager, so maybe he does go to his stars sometimes, and he's like, okay, what do you think? You've been in these winning situations before. You've been in these situations before. What do you think? That definitely let's not forget that complete game that Severino threw where he came out to the mound. He's like, oh, do you want it? Do you got this? You want this to continue? And he continued. So, I really do like that kind of hands-on as to where it's not more by the book of what Carlos Mendoza thinks. And it's more of just like this collective type of unit, which I feel like the initiative needs to be taken. Now, as for the other coaches in that dugout, maybe learn from your leader. That would be really, really cool. Or maybe just fuck off for the next season. But, when it comes to, the full-on regular season of how this thing wrapped up, I do want to get into something that we do every single year. But we can do it with a little bit more joy because we still have baseball to be played. So now, even though we have the postseason in front of us, which is going to be in less than 24 hours to start up, let's look back at the regular season. 162 games are now done, and now it is time for our regular season awards or superlatives or whatever you want to call it. And we're going to do that. And then, of course, we're going to end this one with the studs and duds of the doubleheader. But first, we're going to go with the season awards so then we can kind of do it as sequence. So the first one I want to do here is most expected, right? So somebody who played to your expectations, something you definitely saw coming. It could be good or it could be bad. Andrew, I will swing this one to you if you want to make a decision. If you guys need some time, because I'm blindly giving these to you guys. So, again, these are so I could definitely clue in if you guys need a little bit more time for this one. But at the end of the day, I got my pick for this. If you guys want to hear mine, but let me know. I can say the basic answer, but again, I'm not going to troll much, most likely in this segment, so I'll troll here. And Pete Alonso being right expected as what I thought. Everyone was like, oh, he's going to have this Aaron Judge type walk here.
we're not talking about Aaron Judge. We're talking about a guy who is not built for the lights. Great player. And yes, at the end of the year, had 30, was third in the team in RBIs, which that I didn't see, but third on the team in RBIs overall.
So basically, so that's a fraud pick. Okay. Whatever.
Well, no, but again, it's expected that everyone was talking all offseason that this guy was going to have regret turning down that offer, and look what happened. Again, it's a good player. The easy answer is Francisco Lindor because we expect an amazing, a top 3 shortstop in the game. That's the easy answer. I'm not going to say that, and he's probably going to be the answer to a lot of these because again, he's been the guy on this team. So if it is to what expectation of Pete Alonso not being, an amazing player, being a good player, he got to hit that forte of solid season, not a superstar, just pretty solid player that turned absolutely tiny when we need him the most.
I mean, I guess somewhat. Frank, if you want to add one in here, anybody that you expected, pretty much this was full on 100% what you expected the output to be.
Yeah, I'll go a little underrated one. Tyrone Taylor. I felt like when the Mets brought him in, I liked the move. I was like, okay, he's a good fourth outfielder because he's around league average offensively while giving you speed and while giving you defense. And sure enough, when we look at the final numbers, they're pretty much right on line with where he's been the past few years when he was with Milwaukee. Now, would you have liked home runs that were similar to the output of 2022? Sure. But I think overall, when we're looking at what you got offensively with the stolen bases, the defense was a little down from where it's been in the past, but overall, it was very, very close to what you signed up for when you got him. So I think that's always a big key when you're making these kind of trades as far as like, okay, well, here's a player that was in another organization. Are we going to get that same guy when we bring him to us? And that happened. And you know what? At the time, we thought it was a really good deal because we got Taylor and Hauser went bad, got good, went bad again. But like we talked about, Taylor had a big week this past week. He had a big game today as well. Like I said, unsung hero. So that trade, the Mets did not give up much, and it ended up being a very important, solid deal because one more step with Taylor. When Marte went down, Taylor was the guy that was starting just about every day, and he wasn't amazing, but he didn't kill them. He was able to start when needed, but overall did his job really well as a fourth outfielder, had a lot of good pinch running moments, had great catches in the corners. So he did a lot of different things for this team that may not always show up in the overall player statistics. But I think that when you think back of the moments and the team record, I feel like he had a very nice impact considering the expectations for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good pick because let's just say that, like, in terms of the fourth outfielders and just the depth in general, with a lot of our outfielders, when you want to go to the Jake Marisniks of the world, you want to talk about the Keon Broxtons, sorry for bringing up these names, but
Jesus.
when you're talking about some
Alejandro
of these
De Aza?
Alejandro Diaz, they can't hit a lick
gonna...
whatsoever. They can't provide you any power. Sometimes they're good at defense, but they also kind of just regress or they get hurt, like, some of these pieces. But with Tyrone Taylor, when you're talking about 33 extra base hits this year, I mean, that's impressive. That's something that is pretty impressive from somebody that you expected to come on off the bench in a pinch and just kind of just deepen the outfield depth. I mean, it was really, really impressive. For me, as expected, I'm just going to go in a shittier term. Adam Ottavino. This is pretty easy. I mean, we all really expected this guy to stink, and he stinks. And I really don't even know why he's still here. I want people to pretty much spare me any sort of redeeming qualities. I don't want to hear it. This guy just cannot be trusted whatsoever. All right, so let's get to most surprising. One that played above your expectations, someone that was quite the shocker. I know that all of our takes are usually correct on here, so this is a tough one. Frank, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a Mark Vientos. I feel like he's someone that and I think all three of us for years on this show have been talking about, you know what, trade him. He doesn't have a spot on this team. He doesn't have a role. His prospect status is going down. He's hitting the ball on the ground too much, striking out too much, doesn't play good defense. Trade him. And then they say, you know what, we're going to give him a chance this year. We're going to let him be the DH. Then all of a sudden they signed JD Martinez very late, and we're like, now what are they going to do with Vientos? They're going to do this call up, send down, and he's not going to get that consistent playing time again. Brett Beatty's going to be the third baseman. And for Mark Vientos in 110 games to finish with 27 home runs in his first full season at the third base position was incredible. So I give him a ton of credit for making the most out of his opportunity. He finishes the year with an 844 OPS, 137 OPS plus, tied with Lindor. Actually, it might be a little lower based on Lindor's game today, but I just think overall he definitely exceeds expectations because we're like, okay, you know what? He might be about league average bat. He'll be okay offensively, but he was much better than that. He was one of the best offensive third basemen in the National League. He was okay defensively third base, not much range, but the balls he get to, he made the plays. He made most of the routine plays, and just overall, he got big hits for them. You think back to the Cincinnati game, the 2 home run game, the walk-off. He got the big home run early in the year as well. So I feel like he was just huge for this team, and he really leveled himself up to the point where, you know what, he's batting third, he's batting second. So he really worked his way up. And the thing that impressed me the most about Vientos this year was he had a little bit of a slump in the Toronto series. Actually, after the big Cincinnati game, it was a little bit of a slump and a little bit in Philadelphia. But overall, he did not have the extended slump that a lot of guys on this team had. Alonso never got a hot streak. Nimmo struggled. Bader struggled. Marte struggled. Martinez really struggled in the second half. He never had that extended slump like all these veteran guys did. And I found it so interesting that we talk so much about the guys struggling with the outside pitch, the right-handers, and they can't go the opposite field. Vientos did that great. He was the one guy that got the home run off Schwellenbach in the first 2 starts. And I felt like for the young player to be the one that made the adjustments compared to the veterans, I thought that said a lot about him as a player. And he's someone that now, we talk so much about trading, now I'm like, no way you could trade this guy. You're going to find a way to have him in the lineup, whether it's third, whether it's first, whether it's DH. Mark Vientos needs to be in the Mets lineup going forward. So I'm very proud of him. I'm thrilled that he had this great season, and it's exciting to see what he's got in store.
For someone who was not here on the opening day roster, he played, I don't know, like maybe 75% of the season. Somebody that we were told could not really play great defense. Someone who doesn't really run the bases well, not that fast. A 3-win season from Mark Vientos. Let's just say that is pretty impressive for the youngster. Andrew, a surprise for you? A surprising player?
Let's go with a guy who's gonna probably finish top 7 in National League Cy Young Award winner. It's Sean Manaea. Like, yes, there was people like the acquisition in the offseason, but again, coming off kind of so-and-so type years the last couple years, the fact that it just took an easy tweak of his arm angle, and he is comparable to Chris Sale since that start the rest of the season, and like I said, is going to get National League Cy Young Award votes just for a guy they signed for 2 years, $28 million. Who's going to opt out this year and get absolutely paid by someone this offseason. Maybe it's the Mets, maybe it's somewhere else. The fact that, again, Jeremy Hefner turned him into a god, and gotta love Jeremy Hefner and his great pitching lab to turn this guy into an absolute stud. And pitching, again, trust a guy you can trust to pitch game 2 of a playoff series for a guy that most people were like, well, if we sign him as our 5th starter, we'll be happy in the offseason, to turn into the best pitcher in the rotation. I mean, that has to be the biggest surprise, not just in Metland, but overall maybe in baseball.
I wasn't. You just weren't part of that gang. I don't know what to tell you. You just weren't part of the gang.
Carson,
there is some really
talked
good
about moving him to the bullpen. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, because he had bullpen experience. Absolutely.
We had our concerns. We had our concerns about how far he was going into games, about his walk issues, not attacking the zone. There were legitimate concerns, but to Andrew's credit, he made those adjustments, changed the arm slot, and he looked a lot better. Now, as far as how it all ends up, we'll see, because he has a second chance against Milwaukee. It did not go well for him on Friday night. Yep. I need a whole lot better this time around. You got a second chance at it. Don't waste it. Game 2, as we know, is a pivotal game, because it's like, if you're down 1-0, game over. If you're up 1-0, now you're in a really good spot. Like game 2 in any playoffs, especially obviously when there's multiple, game 2 is always massive. In NBA all the time, you see game 1 is a blowout. Then the other team splits game 2, and you have a brand new series. So I think it's going to be his biggest start as a Met. And like I said in the last stream, is going to decide for me, what am I doing with him in the offseason? What am I offering him? Because you can have a great year, a great second half, but you don't come in the big spots, I can't give you big time money. Because we're saying that with Alonso. It's supposed to be big money players come up in big money spots. And if you don't, then you can't get paid big money. I mean, that's just kind of how it should go.
I've talked about Shamanaya as someone I would possibly bring back, as one of the few guys I would possibly bring back. We're going to do a stay or go of free agency. That might change if he does not pitch well in the postseason. Who knows? Who knows? There are some really good answers. There are some really good answers in the chat.
Oh, boy.
Some people acting like idiots. But also, we had Jose Iglesias as a possibility. Also, there were some answers of the guy that I would pick being Danel Nunez, because this guy just came out of nowhere. It sucks he didn't get to finish his season, because I think that he was someone who saved our ass many, many times in a lot of tight situations.
And you know what? Real quick with Nunez, he would have solved the issue that we had the discussion about with Diaz and Maton and who to trust. Like, if you had Nunez and you could have went to him and not out-tired Maton, not overused Diaz, it would have made a huge difference. And someone else, Carson mentioned Nunez and Brooks Raley. Like, if you had Brooks Raley and Nunez in the back end of the bullpen, plus Maton, plus Diaz, all of a sudden you have a pretty nice back end. But with not having him, I thought it changed a lot. And when Diaz was hurt as well, Nunez was stepping up massive. And then we saw early in the year with Reed Garrett when he stepped up big time and then he fell apart. With Nunez, it never happened. Like, this guy was just about, when he was healthy, he was good just about every single time. He didn't have a slump, nothing. I mean, he was incredible. I hope the injury, as far as like not like a massive procedure where he's out for a long period of time, because I hope we could keep him. I just want to see more of him because he pitched that good.
Yeah, and again, we all know that relievers can be a little bit finicky in and out. Maybe he comes back and he's not the same, but the foundation that this guy has under all these years of controls, I mean, he was fantastic for us. And it sucks that we're not going to be able to see him in the postseason, because I feel like he would have been a great key to that. But I mean, finishing the year, 35 innings pitched, 1.31 earned run average, can't complain about that. It seemed like he was pretty much playing to all peripherals whatsoever. He knew how to get the ball on the ground. He knew how to strike guys out. He didn't walk anybody, which is one of the main keys to this Mets pitching staff, which has been a problem all year. I mean, it was great. Now let's get over to a great one that I think that you can definitely put a guys in this category being most disappointing. Someone who played below your expectations. I think I would like to start this one off and saying it basically just to establish it. In terms of expectations, even though Andrew kind of ruined the entire storybook of it, Pete Alonso was definitely the most disappointing whatsoever. Because again, yes, you said that he's not made for the lights. We've seen him come through before. This year, not at all. And that is going to cost him a lot of money in free agency. We know that it will. Unless he has a ridiculous playoff run, I don't see it happening, to be honest, at the trajectory that we're looking at. And even in the low leverage situation, I'm pretty sure he had a wrist fail in this final game that didn't even matter. So, I mean, at this point, I'm not really expecting much. I really am not. And, again, he is going to cost himself a lot of money this offseason. And you know what? What's done is done. Should have taken the money, Pete. I don't know what to tell you. Frank, I'll go to you. Most disappointing?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy one for me. It's JD Martinez, and Adil mentions him right here.
Easily.
Now, JD is someone I was pumped that the Mets got. I mean, I've been advocating this guy on this show for years. I said JD Martinez, perfect fit, real DH, hits lefties, perfect power backup. I feel like he would just solve everything that the Mets needed offensively as an additional power source, a true DH. No Darren Ruff, Daniel Vogelback, Dom Smith, all these other guys that we saw. I felt like he would have just done perfect with the role. And he got off to a very good start. He was going to opposite field. He was getting big hits, game-winning hits. He was doing great. And then all of a sudden, the epidemic of the sliders on the outside, I felt like it started with him and everyone else followed. And he just struggled with the outside pitch the rest of the season, never made an adjustment, and never got it going again. And he progressively got worse. And I never thought, when the Mets first got him, that by playoff time, I would say, you know what? I would rather have Tyrone Taylor's bat not just glove, not just speed. I'd rather have Tyrone Taylor's bat in the lineup than JD Martinez, because even the hits that he got in Milwaukee, they were on the ground. And like I've said, with his lack of speed, it is useless. If you got a hit on the ground, you basically didn't get a hit, because if you're hitting on the ground, automatic double play. And how many rallies has he killed in the month of September with his ground balls? Just absolutely killing the team. So he's really, it kind of hindered the roster as far as what they could do and their flexibility and their versatility, that they're carrying this DH who cannot play a position, who you need to take out for a pinch runner, who couldn't play at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock because he's too old like myself. He should be home with me watching the series with me. I love you, JD. Come home, retire with me, and we could watch it together, because right now he hadn't been good in a while, and it's been going on for too long. Like, you want to have a bad month, a bad couple of weeks, that's fine. That's part of baseball. But when you're bad the entire second half and getting worse, I can't do it. He had a couple of long fly balls in Philadelphia. He hit one in Milwaukee. But overall, it's really just been a big struggle for him. And I never thought I would say, give me just about anybody else in this lineup besides him. I didn't think that'd be the case. And it's frustrating because he got off to the good start and looked like the guy I expected. And then it just fell off the map. And this is a guy that we talk so much about as being a hitting savant. He's always watching video of his swings and always making adjustments, and it just knows the art of hitting. But he could never hit a slider. He could never lay off the slider on the outside corner. So I just feel like I was lied to. I don't know if it's Eric Chavez's fault, probably, but overall, he was a disappointment for me. Because when it comes down to, he's finishing the season at a 106 OPS plus. If you told me that JD Martinez was going to be around league average, and honestly, the way he was going, the season continued, he would have been below league average the way he was going. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, and again, I think that, age could be a factor in this. It could happen. Maybe it's just putting the Mets uniform on, you just become an absolute shell of yourself. In terms of the timely hitting, I mean, we already know about Pete Alonso and this whole mess. JD Martinez was here for 120 games. He came in about, 40 games into the season. Pete Alonso played all 162. When it comes to JD Martinez, he grounded into 17 double plays as a Met, which is not great, let's just say. And like you said, hitting the ball on the ground, which he didn't really do as much percentage-wise, but still very, very concerning. And the fact that we just can't rely on a veteran hitter who has been good for a long time into his early to mid 30s, it kind of sucks. And I'm not going to lie. JD Martinez was definitely part of that, but I think that Alonso is somebody that I definitely expected a little bit more from. Andrew, did I go to you for most disappointing? What do you think?
This is, again, an injury definitely ruined this guy's season. And yes, he's had a better end of September, which is great, and hopefully he keeps it up. But the overall season for Francisco Alvarez defensively regressed horrifically. Again, the bat, he was stuck on like 7 homers. And yes, I get it. He got injured. The hand most likely definitely lingered and zapped all of his power. But overall, this was a guy we looked at the beginning of the season to be, holy hell, if this guy could take the jump, he hit a bunch of homers his rookie year. Imagine having that in the bottom of our lineup, hitting 25 plus homers. And again, injuries, you could say, wipe that. But even still, the defensive regression has been horrific. The pass balls, he couldn't throw my fat ass out as bad as he's fucking throwing balls away. And my fat ass can probably get a couple steals on Alvarez. And again, you saw with Terenz when he came in, just a complete difference in the running game. So from especially the expectations that this could have been, the breakout, superstar type jump year, for just to kind of be an absolute waste. And yes, there's injuries involved, but just to the expectations we had for him going into the season, he's got to be one of the most disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good point. I mean, I think that, especially with a team that, walks a lot of batters, there was a lot of pitches out of the zone that, he's going to have to block, and he was not able to do that. I mean, it was definitely a liability back there for a while, just moving guys up. Now, as for the caught stealing, I'd say it seems like he's valuing out at the above average, but he's had quite a few wild throws as well this season. We've also talked about the blocking, which just needs to get better in the offseason. He's 22 years old. He's going to get better. I believe that he will, because I think that defensively, just overall, the ability And I know that Frank is about to just jump on it. But as for, the overall blocking ability, -19 run value on there, that's a concern. It is a concern, and hopefully it gets better. I think that it will eventually. But I mean, at the end of the day, he definitely had an injury-riddled season. I'm not really panicking. I do have, some strong hopes for this kid going forward, of course, being the franchise catcher that he is. I know we talked about, giving him a long time extension and stuff like that. Probably have to roll that back a little bit more. Maybe he has to, have another good year and put one together. But we've seen flashes, and, I think it's easy to agree that, it was definitely disappointing. But, injury riddled, it doesn't matter. Frank, is there anything you want to add?
I'm going to say that, you know what, the people I blame is the coaches. Francisco Alvarez has done everything the coaches asked him to do, because you talk about his struggles with the blocks, and it's been bad. It's second percentile, -19, but 89th percentile in framing. They told Francisco Alvarez, go on one knee and focus on framing. And that's what he did. So if you want him to block, don't make him go on one knee, try to frame this stuff, and he'll block better. And then his hitting coach said, no, stop hitting home runs. Go opposite field. Go the other way. Don't pull. Don't you dare try pulling. And he said, okay, coach, I'm just a good person. I'm just going to do what you tell me to do. And he tried going opposite field. It didn't work. Then September, he said, well, last month of the year, just got to go for it and swing for the fences and pull it. And he became amazing again. So overall, it was a disappointing year when you look at the final stats, the blocking, the caught stealing, all that stuff. But I think the biggest, I just think he's doing what the coaches told him to do. I said if the coaches told him, focus more on blocking instead of framing, focus more on home runs instead of going the opposite field, you would have saw some differences in the final results.
deny. Obviously there is some things around this clubhouse that I think that do need to be cleaned up for actual sustainability. That I do agree with, of course. And I do want to kind of shift this over because I do want to leave some time for our viewer Collins later on. But as for our most underrated player, I would say this year, we've had a lot of guys step up. Let's just say that. And some have come out of the woodwork. Some have just done those little things to help us win in the margins. And they've definitely come up big. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who do you think is the most underrated, flies under the radar?
Flying like a bird. I mean, again, I'll say Danilo. I mean, you could say Danilo Nunez is just more underrated. Sure. I mean, again, just for the guy, again, like we've said, this guy wasn't big league invite, and you've seen how valuable, again, like we've said, Reed Garrett back to being shit, Jose Budo, who had great stretches, now is walking everybody, and again, like we said, Maton's been good, but everybody else, Hauskell Bauer, he was been asked, Stanek had his ups and downs, he was kind of the most reliable and kind of, besides obviously the $155,000 million reliever, he was the most valuable guy in that pen. And the fact that he's gone and you've seen the ricochet and the downward trajectory of the rest of this pen, it's not maybe underrated, but it definitely is, from what he was going into the spring training to his now, and you've definitely seen it now in September with him ever since he's been gone in both stretches, when the first injury time and you saw it, and then obviously the rest of this year when he went down, that how valuable and underrated he is to the importance of this bullpen. And hopefully, again, we hope he's not out long term, but again, who knows when we'll see him next.
I mean, another guy that I would add in here as an honorable mention before I go to Frank here, obviously Brooks Raley. It's more of like we're really realizing what we definitely missed with Brooks Raley throughout this, that you can probably put in this category, but he didn't really perform. He pitched like 6 or 7 innings this year, so he did not pitch that much, so he would not be in contention for this type of award. But Frank, is there anybody that you would like to go to for most underrated?
Yeah, I'm going to go with all reliable. And once again, it's David Peterson. I mean, when you look at
I'll agree with you this time.
When you look at the final season numbers, he finished with the best ERA on the staff. He finished with ERA under 3.
As we all saw. We all saw.
Listen, I don't know how much of the hip actually impacted performance. And listen, I think having a better hip actually makes it easier to pitch. So maybe that was part of it. But I think overall for me with Peterson, they win ball games. They score runs for him. He got to pitch in different environments, having that run support. But the big critique that we always had with Peterson was the walks. Too many walks. You can't be a major league starter if you're walking this percentage of batters. But when you look at the end of it, he was right in line with everyone else in the rotation. He was right there with these guys. It wasn't a big drop off. He wasn't over 4. I mean, he was right with everybody else. And we talked about the good year that Severino had. We talked about the great second half that Manaea had. And David Peterson still finished he finished half a run better than Sean Manaea. He finished a full run better than Severino. And he didn't get started until late May. He had a couple of bad starts here in September against some good teams. But then that last game against Milwaukee, how much Milwaukee was trying, probably not. He still came through, though. And that game they needed so bad because you did not want to be in a situation where you potentially needed a sweep or anything like that. So I think for him to finally put it together, and now we really get to see what he's made of, because you got to think he's going to, if the Mets advance, he will pitch in one of these games. I don't know when we'll get to it, but I just want to get off the bat. I'm considering if Quintana has to start game 3 based off days of rest, I'd be curious to have Peterson in the bullpen to piggyback in case Quintana does his 3-inning, 4-inning garbage, to have Peterson back him up as like a couple of innings after that. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
You got a tired bullpen.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, you probably will have to use some long men there. I don't know. I think Tyler McGill's probably going to be used as a long man personally on the roster, but we'll see what happens. Andrew,
I already said
his.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. This is somebody. MEZ. I'm on the same level with him. Tyrone Taylor easily would be my pick here. I mean, again, doing those little things to help us win. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. But for a 4th outfielder, some of the best production we have seen for a while. I know that Jake Marisnick batted like 333 when he was here, but when you're talking about a full season, Tyrone Taylor has definitely given us a lot of value, not just at the plate, in the field, on the base pass, just doing a lot of things right in the margins to help us win games. And he did it till the very end. I mean, he was the one who knocked out Spencer Schwellenbach today earlier on. And I'm pretty sure he threw somebody out at second in the second game. I was like little seldom watching, but I mean, the guy just, I don't know, he just,
beautiful
he's insane.
throw.
Yeah, I mean,
it was awesome.
I mean, he's insane. He just comes up with these crazy ass plays and you're like, where the hell did this guy come from? And he's just one of those spark plugs. And
stealing bases, infield singles when it looks like an automatic out, playing it through as a foul ball becomes fair. Like, he's always hustling, and that goes a long way. It kind of goes with this whole team chemistry, the way they play, always hustling.
And listen, that is something,
he fits right in.
Things like that, that's something that New York fans love to see. They love to see that. And that's a player, that is a winning player for you. Let's just say that.
So in some instances, we rather have a guy with more hustle than talent than a guy who's talented but doesn't hustle. In some instances, you kind of prefer that.
I mean, let's not forget the postseason hero Lenny Dykstra. I mean, let's not forget that. I mean, he had absolutely no fear. I'm not saying that Tyrone Taylor is Lenny Dykstra by any means. I hope he isn't. But again, at the end of the day, I mean, just he really has contributed a lot to this team for a 4th outfielder, and especially with the uncertainty. I think we mentioned this before, but the uncertainty of the health and the ability of Starling Marte, he's really filled in the gaps from what we could have got from Starling Marte, who we expect to give us that at the age he is at right now. We expected he definitely filled in a lot of those gaps as well, where he was playing a little bit of right field as well. He was stealing some bases a lot more than Starling Marte was, and he was healthier than Starling Marte as well. I don't think that Tyrone Taylor got hurt at all this year. He was here all year, Iron Man. But as for coming up big, let's get to Clutch Player of the Year. Someone who came up big for us. We've talked about this before already throughout some of these awards. But somebody that you specifically think was absolutely clutch. Now, again, J.D. Davis is not on the team, so we can't do that. I know that he had the clutch part in his veins in 2019. But this team actually finished the goddamn job and got into the fucking playoffs. So let's wipe 2019 from our memory. Let's talk about clutch. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who you calling clutch?
Clutch obviously means walk-offs. So you got to think about big moments. And yes, it wasn't the greatest season for this player, but he hit him when we needed him. And that's Brandon Nimmo. How many, again, yes, was there a lot of times after that All-Star break and most of the summer, we're like, what the hell is going on with Brandon Nimmo? But we even said it on shows. he'd always pick one game. He'd come up with a big ass hit when you need it, or if it's a big jumping on a first pitch fastball. And how many times right out of a pitching change, he's up, first pitch, boom, it's over the yard. And yes, if it's either insurance or if it's jumping a guy, Brandon Nimmo's been jumping guys, and yes, the
With
batting
this
average,
bullpen, all of them are big. All of them are big.
all of exactly. And again,
Every
you
run
saw,
counts.
and again, biggest game of the year. Yes, it's forgotten, but who would hit the tack on homers? That's what he's done, and not just the AJ Minter walk off on Mother's Day. Dude, sick. Get up, get out. 1AB. Let me hit a quick 2-run homer on Mother's Day. I'm gonna go shit myself, but still gonna hit a 2-run homer. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, no. How
Jesus
about the time
Christ, man.
when he fell in the hotel and he had to come in late?
Exactly.
And he was a big hero in that game as well. I mean, there was countless.
Let's not
times.
forget the
Phillies game against Zach
undercooked
Wheeler.
chicken from a few years ago.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
was
but
huge.
again,
he was huge.
yes, the overall number is great. No, but again, I'd rather have a guy who at the end of the year you're like, oh, but again, I'd rather have a meaningful 22 than an empty 30, and I'm totally not implying anyone.
Definitely not.
Totally not.
Brandon Nimmo, his numbers in high leverage situations, he had 44 plate appearances in high leverage, a 161 weighted runs created plus. I mean, that's one of the
Lot of weight.
clutchiest guys out there, so that's a really good pick. Frank, I'll go to you.
Yeah, no, I feel like this is the easy answer, but it felt like, and he showed it again today, but Lindor. I mean, it just felt like,
Yep.
we talk about the meaningful hits. It just felt like he came through in just about every single big spot. In almost all of them. It felt like he had something to do with it one way or another, whether it was a hit, a walk, a stolen base, a play in the field, a mound visit. Late in games, he just comes through, and he did it twice today when they needed it most. The game they needed the most, he came through twice, and he did it with a bad back, with just, you know, all the things that were going on. He called the team meeting. I mean, like, this guy just did so much for this organization that I really love what we have in him. I'm excited that we have him for a long time, and I feel like he's going to have a good postseason. I do feel confident saying that. He's been there before, which a lot of these other guys have not. He had success with Cleveland in the postseason, and I feel like we're going to see that again, and we're going to need it because, like we talked about, the inconsistencies with this offense, you need your stars to come through, and I feel confident as him, one of my stars in a playoff series.
All right. Well, as for me, I think I got to do diligence here because, like I said, we talked about him last time. He came through when it mattered at the end. He was one of the main reasons as to why we went on this run to the postseason. I think it's easy to say that David Peterson does deserve the flowers on this one. And I'm going to tell you right now, he came through. And listen, I'm not going to say, listen, September looked a little rough starting off, but then the main thing that sealed it was that start yesterday for me. 7 scoreless innings. The Mets needed a win desperately on the road against a team they haven't beaten at all this season. They started off the season getting swept by this team. And in the 6th try, the Mets finally beat them, shut them out 5-0. And one of the main reasons as to why was David Peterson, 7 scoreless innings. And again, overall, this year, like Frank said when calling him the most underrated, a great campaign. How will that continue? I don't know. Will it last? Who knows? I personally don't really care about that discussion right now. What I care about is this team is in the postseason. One of the main reasons as to why is David Peterson. Andrew, you are smiling at me. What exactly do you want to say? Get it off your mind before we continue.
Good. I'm ready for the LVP. I'm just vibing. It's all positive.
All right,
baby.
LVP, least valuable player, the worst known to man on this team, who just was absolutely awful. There's quite a few picks. Some guys aren't even here that it could be some pretty good picks. But as for Andrew, I'll let you start it off. You were anxious for it, so go ahead.
I mean, I'll just take the easy, low-hanging fruit of the former manager, future manager, that is Adam Ottavino. Again, how the hell this man survived the whole year also shows the quality of what's available. So, I mean, he's still here. And there was, but there was a 2-week stretch where he had big shutout innings. in games that were either out of hand or winning, blowing them out, cool. Again, he's 90 years old. The sliders, who gives a shit? Like, I've had enough of them. Thank God. Again, do not bring it back. I almost said his name again. Dave, you told him to fuck off in the offseason before. Then he came crawling back and you gave him a deal. Let him go to Cincinnati. Let him go to the Sacramento A's and let him do his Trevor May arc out in Oakland or Syracuse or Sacramento or Vegas or Guangdong, wherever the hell the A's are playing. Please just let him sign with the A's and just move on.
Oh, God. I love Andrew. I really do. I just think he's, like, just the best. Okay. Frank, I'll go to you. Someone you want to throw under the bus?
Oof, there are a lot of candidates. I mean, let's go down the PTSD aisle. I mean, who you want? You want
Jesus.
Omar Narvaez, my buddy?
Oof.
Do you want
Yeah.
Joey Wendell? Do you want Zach Short? And a lot of people mentioning Mr. Jake Diekman. You could go a lot of different routes of guys who did not provide much value. But I'm going to piggyback off of Andrew, but for a different reason. It's more so that Ottavino lasted... Ottavino lasted the whole season part because there were multiple times, and I remember clear as day when I talked about it when it was in that West Coast swing when I was like, why is Ottavino here over a long man? And that was my big critique is like when we talk about the value that you're bringing, if you're a one-inning reliever who could only face right-handed hitters, you can't control the run game, so you can't come in with men on base, and you could only go one inning, and we can't use you when we have a lead because you're not reliable enough, then why are you on the roster when if I'm going to be behind by a lot, I could use a long man and save my other guys so I don't overwork Reed Garrett, I don't overwork Dan Young, don't overwork Maton. I could just have more overall value. DJ Stewart's another good mention as well. But I feel like just that whole season aspect of not trying something else, not having a long man, I felt like could have helped them not have so many guys that were tired. So for me, it was just that overall longevity of like, what value are you providing if we have so many specifications as to when you can be good and stuff when we don't actually need it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I can this be it? Can it just be it? I'm done. He just doesn't go away. He just does not go away. He's like one of those fucking gnats that just flies around your room and you're trying to catch it the entire time. And then you finally catch it and then you realize, it's still there. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think that this is a good pick. And again, I think we just noticed it here. I mean, DJ Stewart is a really good pick here because I feel like with how he limited this team in terms of the depth, even though they still had that versatility and some of those guys who could help you win in the margins, it just didn't really make sense to have him. And it just really felt like another sense of Daniel Vogelbach that you just did not want here. He definitely did own a glove and he's played positions before. And we feel like at some point he could turn into one, but you know, it's called ShopRite Schwarber for a reason. I mean, they have exclamation dates. Let's just say that. Expiration dates. And, I think at the end of the day, it just did not work. I mean, it really just did not work for as long as he was here. Now, I think we're just doing this based off performance, but this is one thing that you could put in here. Fujinami did not have a good year. Yeah. He got hurt. But he did not pitch for us, so that's somebody you could mention if you want to by going off of, the performance because he was on the 40-man roster for a while. But as for the good,
could you throw Senga in that equation as well? Technically, with all the injuries he had, you had some expectations.
I mean,
for
sure.
him, and he just didn't show up.
I mean, he's just kind of like the Japanese DeGrom, right, Andrew? I mean,
Jesus Christ, that's racist.
I feel like that's. I mean, you haven't made that theory video yet, and I know we're working on it for the off season. But
off season, of course.
I mean, at the end, when Senga was out here, he was dealing. But
he was
good.
You
could put him there.
We had him, but
yeah,
he accumulated
we always said, once Senga comes back, once he comes back, and then he's gone.
Yeah, Joey Wendell was a good one. I mean, I think I could have put that as most expected as well. He just sucks. Like, he just sucks. He ain't good. And I think Andrew and I were kind of on that same boat. Frank was a little bit hyped because he was an all-star at one point. But we all realized that he wasn't a good player. He's the same person.
Except white.
They're the same person, just without a beard. He even
Yeah.
took 13, for God's sakes. I mean,
Yeah.
come on now. But I think that when it comes to putting this all together, the MVP, should we do this like as Lindorless MVP? I mean, do you want to just go in that direction? We probably could. I think it's easy to put Francisco Lindor in that conversation. And to be honest, with the time that we have running out, even though we're probably going to go a little bit longer than the usual with the call-ins, because again, we just crunched a spot. We're celebrating. I feel like we can go with Lindor as a mutual thing. Can we agree? I think it's easy. You can put Mark Vientos in there as well because he was a big contributor. Sean Manaea, Luis Severino can be mentioned as well. You can even put David Peterson in that conversation. You can put I don't even know who else you can put. I mean,
hey, Pete Alonso was the All-Star. You got to put the All-Star in there.
Pete Alonso was the All-Star. Who else could we put in there?
Jose Iglesias.
You could put in there.
Yeah.
Jose Iglesias. Batting
Jose
average.
Iglesias, just a revelation completely.
Everyone's an
that's
MVP.
pretty
Everyone
easy.
gets a participation trophy. They're all great players. We're going to playoffs.
All right.
Our friendship.
Yeah, I know. We're all good friends. And then listen, we're all good friends, and that's what wins championships. Friendship. By the power of friendship, we did it. We did it. Yep. All right. So now we have 2 more awards to give out, and that's just specifically what happened today. That being studs and duds. One player that played well. I guess we're just going based off of this game because there was like more events to basically kill a small baby horse in this game because it was crazy. Studs for that game that we clinched. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who would you like to give it to?
You know what? I'm not going to be basic. I'll let Frank be basic. I'm just Brandon Nimmo. Again, pimp job, fat nukes. And he also got a hit in the second game. He's one of the only few hits they had in the second game. So big fat nukes, hits in both games. You know, power of, Wyoming horses and deers.
All right. Frank, you want to go with your Puerto Rican counterpart here easily?
I mean, we've talked about him all stream. Let me give it to somebody else. Let me give it to Marte because Marte comes off of the bench and he had 2 hits and scored both times. So you know what? If you want to show up, now was the time to do it. So
yes.
we've given Lindor props the whole stream. He's the MVP. He's everybody. He's the stud. He's everything. But I want to give Marte some props too.
Yeah, Marte is a good one. I mean, yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, I basically just ruled him out of my lineup. And then he just comes in and he's like, okay, well, Carson, you're a bitch, and I will do it my way and score every single time. And again, setting the table, stringing hits together. That's how we won. I think we can put Jose Iglesias in here because he just keeps on hitting. I mean, what else? I mean, I think this is the 3rd time in a row I've put him in as my stud. I mean, at the end of the day, what a revelation. What a season he has had. Again, we don't know if this continues. We don't know if he sticks around for another season or two. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's a veteran type of player that, hopefully, he could be hot as well, and he could be pretty big in the postseason as well. And we'll see what happens. Ian coming in here and saying, when will they post the official playoff roster? Well, I hope they don't do it before the segment I'm about to do, but probably sometime in the morning, sometime in the afternoon tomorrow, most likely. But as for duds, there's some clear ones because it was a tough one. Frank, I feel like there's one that you could easily throw under the bus on this one. What do you think?
It's got to be Darth Vader himself. It's got to be Harrison. 2 opportunities, squandered both of them. Bad September, bad second half. I thanked him. I gave him credit. I said I was wrong, but I should have stuck with my guns. I was right. So, thanks.
Well, I mean, he was good in the first half.
He was.
Taylor was good for the second half. It was good to make one player. See, when it comes to Moneyball, we like to recreate a player, okay? Andrew, Your dud?
I mean, again, when you got Masturbator just out here leaving, and especially when Schwellenbach was dealing, and you had two ABs,
Yeah.
especially one with the infield in, and you swing first pitch and kill about 57 ants to hit a ball right at Gio Urshela. Can't hit the ball at least the other way to find it. Oh, no. Literally projectile right at Gio Urshela's face, and then obviously
projectile vomit it right to his face.
Right in the throat. And then, again, in the second AB, he just swings like two fastballs at his dick. Like, above his head, just getting behind accounts. It's just Harrison Bader. Yes, elite defender, sure, cool. Run prevention, yay. But especially when you had Schwellenbach in a rare on the ropes, he just comes back and just nut kicks Harrison Bader both times. So he's got to be the dud.
Harrison Bader came up big in the postseason for the Yankees. What was it, 2 years ago? Something like that?
Yeah.
So maybe it'll happen again.
Where'd that get him? Nowhere. And then he showed up as a fraud. They kept him the next year, and he was so bad they had to get rid of him. He was a fraud. That's what he does. He gets you excited. You think he's good, and then
what
he
happened?
stinks.
Bro, who the hell
just happened?
Dude, how much money did you bet
How
on
did this
Harrison
turn into
Bader?
WFAN so goddamn quickly? What the fuck? Jesus Christ. I mean, I think you guys are leaving the guy that I can obviously put in here for me to hold my guy accountable. And you know what? Since we made the playoffs today, I'm not going to do it, to be honest. I'm not going to be an honest guy. I'm actually going to give it to Phil Maton because he set up the mess. So you know what? You're the one to blame. Okay?
Yeah. No, I mean, hitting a defensive replacement with a pitch is pretty bad. Like, that's the equivalent to, like, hitting Eddie Alvarez with a pitch. Maybe not that extent, but still, like, you can't hit a defensive replacement. Like, come on.
He started it, okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could definitely put a Diaz in there again. I mean, I'm an honest man. But when it comes to the full-on bullpen concerns like we've talked about, that definitely had an impact on this game, and it could have gone completely south. But again, they still pulled it out, and they got their wild card berth today.
And honorable mention is Taylor for number one. He set up the first rally with the infield single that went foul, then fair, stole the base. But then he had the long AB against Schwellenbach where he got the double that set up the first
knocked
rally
him out
as well. So
yeah,
that was big.
He knocked out his pitch pace. He notched out his pitch pace because it was like what he was at like
he was at like 70 something, and then he had like 11 pitch AB. I think like 78 or so. And then he had 11 pitch AB. All of a sudden, he's in like around 90, and now they had to make a decision. Alvarez gets the hit, and then everything just followed.
Competitive ABs. That's nice to see, number 20, take some notes. That'd be cool. But as for the last thing that I want to do before we can talk to you guys, I think that the best way to go into the postseason after recapping the entire regular season is to basically talk about process of elimination. Now, we all know that the Mets are going to set their roster for the postseason very, very quickly because they start up tomorrow for Game 1 against the Brewers, which we will have coverage for. By the way, pregame show, once again, we're reminding you, which will most likely be at 4 o'clock tomorrow because we start off at 5:30 in Milwaukee for Game 1 as for the Mets playoff game. So that will be our pregame coverage. We'll have postgame coverage as well. But I need to get into my full-on breakdown of my top 5. Now, for those of you who have not seen me do this before, I compact a list of top 5 of any category, and Frank and Andrew get to tear it apart. Let us know what he thinks about it. You guys can give your opinions as well. We all know I have my strong opinions. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. But as for this one, in postseason fashion, I am going to give you my top 5 players who are on the 40-man roster at this current point, who are eligible, who cannot be on the postseason roster. So, you may have had some hints as to who is probably on this list throughout, and now you're going to figure out who it is going to be. So let us know what your opinions are as you're reacting to it in the chat. I have my top 5 guys who should not be on the postseason roster, and we will pop them up on the screen for your top 5. And we're going to start this one off with your number 5 being Alex Young. After being claimed off of waivers from San Francisco, Young spent a few months with the Mets in the majors. Some were okay and some were not. In that time, he was basically treated like the ninth man in the bullpen. And even though he did post a 3.92 earned run average across 13.2 innings pitched, the underlying stats just really were not that good. Per his pitch arsenal, hitters were recording quality of contact, or xWOBA, shall we say, over 325 against his changeup, sinker, and curveball. And with his lack of put-away pitches, susceptibility to contact, and his massive struggles against left-handed hitters as a left-handed pitcher, a majority of his pitches will go directly into the barrel window. He's also been pretty ineffective, as well as of late, posting an ERA over 5 in his last 10 appearances. He is decent AAA team depth, but it does not belong on the postseason roster in the slightest. Number 4, Oscar Brazaban. Before the Mets acquired him at the trade deadline, Brazaban was having an incredible year with Miami, posting a 2.93 earned run average, a 2.64 fielding independent pitching, striking out and struck out 27.2% of batters. Although he may have great stuff, his lack of control and command since joining the Mets has really pushed him down the pecking order for the bullpen, walking 14.3% of batters and surrendering 10 earned runs across just 19.2 innings pitched. Brazaban's horrendous leverage splits have led to the conclusion that the Mets cannot trust him in big spots. Velocity may cover a lot of sins, but when you cannot get the ball over the plate, there's only so many times you can rely on hitters chasing, especially in the postseason, where you have a lot of disciplined hitters. There's definitely still some upside for this 34-year-old right-hander who has control through 2029, but the results are the only thing that matters in the postseason, and they just have not been good this year in a Mets uniform for Brazaban. Number 3, Brett Baty. This one is pretty obvious, but here is just a reminder. Brett Baty is not a major leaguer, even without the fact that Vientos has won the third base job outright. Baty has shown absolutely nothing in over 600 plate appearances in the majors, slashing 215, 282, 325, struggling to pull or lift the ball, awful pitch selection, and recognition. If you put Brett Baty at the plate against elite pitching that you're going to face in the postseason, he would most likely be an automatic out. I'm not calling him a bust. Actually, no, I am actually calling him a bust. I actually see absolutely nothing. Although his defense has improved, his overall prowess at third base is still very subpar, in my opinion, having an inferior arm to Vientos in strength and accuracy. Will Baty get another chance at the big league level? I'm sure he will, but it should not be in the postseason. Whether Eddie Alvarez is postseason eligible or not, he's just not a viable option for the Mets in the postseason. Number 2, DJ Stewart. The incredible month of DJ Stewart will always be remembered, but it needs to stay a memory until the end of time. He came through a few times in the thick of the Mets' comeback to contention, but he's just not an everyday player by any means. When he did play, he slashed 177, 325, 297 with 5 home runs and 194 plate appearances. His approach may have that type of Schwarber effect on a lineup, but the truth is he just is not Schwarber. He may walk and get on base a lot, but his inability to steal any bases eliminates him from the efficiency equation, setting up the double play in theory. He's not a great defender in the outfield, and he would not play in the outfield considering the 5 viable outfielders that the Mets have on their active roster. It was a fun story for a bit, but he just does not belong in the postseason. And number 1, surprise, surprise, Adam Ottavino. There's really not much to say here, but I'm going to say it anyway. Adam Ottavino has been a complete liability to the Mets bullpen, and he should have been DFA'd months ago. For some reason, his seasoned experience has been overwritten by the no-nonsense policy from David Stearns this season. Not only has Ottavino been banished to low-leverage roles, he has continued to be noticeably awful, even with less appearances. Spare me his ERA in the last 3 innings that he has. Spare me his underlying numbers that don't include his horrendous command issues that have regressed into the ground since his 2022 campaign. He can't be trusted. He's just not a good pitcher anymore. I'd say that this is the last of Adam Ottavino's Mets tenure, but this motherfucker just keeps coming back. Doesn't matter how many times he fails to restructure his contract, declines player options to screw himself out of money, he just won't fucking go away. If the Mets roster Adam Ottavino in the postseason, which, you know what, I'm sure they will, because he has dirt on the entire Mets front office, as far as we're concerned, they are just asking to lose. No, Adam, it was not foolish to let you go. It's foolish that you are still here. So there is my top 5 players who cannot be on the Mets postseason roster come tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, probably going to be revealed before our audio even comes out. But that's where I'm at. My top 5 guys on this 40-man roster. There are some guys that you can choose that are on that 40-man roster that you don't feel comfortable with, but I think we have seen enough of these 5 players to know that they don't have it and shouldn't be on the postseason roster. So there it is. Frank, I'll go to you. If you want to tear this one apart, if you agree, if you disagree, what do you think?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. Number one, for Alex Young, he got optioned for the Mets to activate Joey Lucchesi.
He's still on the 40-man roster, so he still counts.
He's still on the 40-man roster, but someone was saying that I don't think they can call him up for quite some time now because of them sending him down. So I don't think he could make it even if they wanted him to.
Mission accomplished then. Awesome.
Yeah, so let's say we know that Alex Young is not an option. The guy I would replace it with is Eddie Alvarez. I don't want to see him on this team at all. I don't care. Defensive replacement, speed, Olympics.
He's not eligible, so I didn't put him in there.
Yeah, so I just don't want to see anyone like of that ilk. None of those guys. I don't want to see any of that crap. But one other guy instead of Alex Young that I would also consider is Danny Young, because I feel like he's been a guy that I just can't trust him, especially if Alvarez is going to be focused on framing and not blocking pitches. With how much Danny Young throws it to the backstop and in the dirt, and it's just all over the place, I can't trust him. And we haven't seen him in this Atlanta series. And then when it comes to Ottavino, they pitched him in both games of the doubleheader today, which would make me think there's no way he's available tomorrow. So why would you roster him if he's not available? However, on the flip side, who would you roster? Because then that means that you need to call up another reliever from the minor leagues. So who would that be?
For me, I am just basically using Tyler McGill as a reliever, but he's not going to be available, obviously, for game 1 because he started today. So that probably would make you like less relievers available for that day. And not to mention, Tyler McGill probably wouldn't be able to pitch for game 2 either, to be honest.
And you already probably don't have Maton. Don't think you have but you have Diaz for a little bit, not full Diaz. So they're
going to be in a tight situation.
It's a choice.
Let's just say that
they're
going to be in a tight situation for the pitching, and like we've said, we're probably pushing for Luis Severino to go 6 or 7 in game 1. I mean, I think that it's really tough again because you're probably going to have a few guys in that bullpen going into game 1 unavailable, like without any competition whatsoever. Like you're going to still have some of these pieces that are not going to be available or just not going to be reliable. I think that you're going to see you're going to see Ryan Stanek tomorrow. I think that you're going to see I think that you're going to see Jose Budo. Obviously, you're going to see Reed Garrett as availability. I know we talk about the trust in him, but I mean, he's going to be one of those pieces that goes out there. So they are pretty strapped for game 1, which is why this whole hurricane thing sucked with this timing of the doubleheader. But again, it's interchangeable with Alex Young. Again, I mean, I made this list before he was even optioned. Didn't expect he was going to be, but he's still on the 40-man roster. I know that he probably can't come back. So I guess mission accomplished, but I mean, this is just how the list was set. Ibby coming in here saying that the Beatty hate is uncalled for. Well, he's on 40-man roster, so it's fair game. So,
nice little middle finger to Beatty. Celebrating.
He's terrible. Yeah, I mean, he was
Yeah.
he was there celebrating. Exactly.
And this
Ian
is a
coming in
point
here. Yeah.
Ron Darling made. He was saying about the Mets
Yes.
using Ottavino for both games of doubleheader. The Brewers are going to run all over. I mean,
Yeah,
they steal bases
exactly.
like
Like,
crazy, and Ottavino's a terrible matchup for them.
yeah, it's awful. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely awful. I mean, we know that Diaz is not going to be available. He doesn't do well holding runners either, which is something I really
Yeah.
don't care about because I
And
need him to
one
focus
thing
on the
I
hitter.
would
But
consider in the specific Brewer series, if JD Martinez is not hitting, I would consider DHing Alvarez and starting Torrens.
Yeah.
If Martinez
I
isn't
mean-
going to hit anyway, I got to limit what the Brewers do best.
all right, Andrew, if you want to add in here what you think, I know that you've got some jokes for us, but I mean, Brett Beatty sucks, man. You were wrong about him. I mean, he just sucks. I mean, he just really sucks. I mean, he just sucks so much that he's just not a good baseball player. And listen, Ibby saying that he's taking the Coke away. I have not drank Coca-Cola in a while. I've switched to coffee in the last few days. I wasn't feeling well with Coke, but we're not talking about beverages at this current moment. Andrew, get your word in. Go ahead.
I mean, again, when 3/5 of the list is relievers, and again, like we've said, we're down 2 relievers, it's not a great thing, and especially, again, Huskar Brazaban, great baseball savant page, we all getting excited. That experiment is gone. We all know how I feel about any Danny, Eddie, Alex, Jeremy Young, they all suck. Again, Beatty probably is going to end up on this roster because, again, there's really no other backup. I mean, yes, you can put Acuna. You would think it'd be Iglesias, Lindor, Acuna, up the middle.
No, because with 28, you have to cut a position player, and Eddie Alvarez is the one that's cut,
okay, that's
so you
true,
stick
yeah.
with what you have.
Okay. So there you go. Okay. So yeah, so it's not even. What the fuck am I talking about? But yeah.
Unless
again,
Winker
with
is
the
hurt.
list-
That's the
Unless
one
that
way
is
Beatty has
the
an
other-
avenue. He'd be
yeah.
the only lefty bat. Because Winker,
Yeah.
we didn't.
Yeah.
I was very
'Cause he can
surprised
replace an
we
injured
didn't see him
player,
at
correct?
least game 2.
Yes, you. Yeah, I think
He
He can
still
replace an
replaced.
injured player, correct?
Yeah.
Eddie
Yeah.
Alvarez, like the only way he's eligible is replacing an injured player.
Oh, I guess.
Even
Yeah.
then, that's the one time I would go Beatty over Alvarez. If Winker's not available, I'd go Beatty.
Yeah. I mean, I had Eddie Alvarez. I would have Eddie Alvarez on here if he was postseason eligible, but he's not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just did not have him in the equation. And
then
also,
we-
I would take
yeah.
him over Brett Beatty because Brett Beatty fucking sucks. Andrew, continue.
And then again, we don't need to have another Terrence Gore rant pre-show playoff. Well, why did I got a fucking speed skater or a really small person that runs
But
fast?
Terrence Gore was an Olympic speed skater.
He
There's
wasn't.
a difference here.
And then
But
we'll end.
the thing that scares me about Eddie Alvarez, and it almost happened today, was they brought him in as a defensive replacement, and they put him in the 3 spot because they took him out for Vientos. That's who would get replaced. And luckily, the Mets had the lead by then. But there was a good chance that Eddie Alvarez could have been up in like a really big spot there and just having to hit. And the same thing happened for the Braves with White, and he ended up getting on base both times. But that's the one thing with these defensive replacements is that they could end up having to bat depending on if your bullpen blows it. And while Beatty has not been good, if you want to defensive replace Beatty, if you want Vientos with Beatty, and if worse comes worse, Beatty has to make it that bat over Alvarez, I'll take that chance. Much better.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, can we throw that back up? Because I was gonna make I had a joke ready, but like, can we look at the W in DJ Stewart's name and tell me that doesn't look like him in real life? Look how big that fucking W is in the middle of his name.
Yeah.
That man built like that W. Like Jesus Christ. But all right, let's go talk to the people now and pop some
Wow,
bottles.
that was great. Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the roster as we wait for some here to come through, as I will now place the link in the chat for live call-ins. Now, before we get into this, okay?
Please tell me you got a graphic made for shit not to do.
Before we get into this, we have not done this for a while. And there are a few reasons as to why. We won't get into it.
Well, I was going to.
There's a main reason as to why. And it's mainly because it's done live and nothing can be edited out. And some people were just not able to control themselves. So I want to remind everyone, for those of you who do call in any meantime, please refrain from saying any racial slurs, suspicious behavior or anything that could possibly waste our time. If you're going to act like an ass, we're going to treat you like an ass. Okay? And that is going to be the rules for everyone. So for those of you who want to call in, you can call in. I will place the link in the chat and pin it. Frank, is there anything you want to add here?
Yeah, it's a one-strike policy. You mess up, you can never come back. So don't do it.
Call in.
No baby oil jokes,
right
nothing
here.
crazy. Come on.
Nothing.
Keep it civil.
We're here to talk.
Keep it civil.
We can talk
talking
baseball
Mets,
or
all right?
sports. That's it. You want to talk baseball, sports. That's it. We're not talking about anything else. Nothing.
All right.
Nothing.
There's the link right there. I am pinning it. Frank, I know this is going on your channel as well. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's a family-friendly channel. So we really gotta
copy and
watch
paste
our tongues
this.
Oh,
If you want to
boy.
copy and paste this and then pin it in your chat if you want to do that.
Sir.
So for those of you who want to call in, make sure to go and call in now. I'm also going to put it into our Twitter live chat as well. For those of you who want to call in, you can. Let me just, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Hold on. And as we wait for some people to call in, we will add in some other conversation. Now, as for the roster continuing, of course, is it possible that Brett Beatty comes in to call and complain to me? Maybe. But listen, I'm a tough customer to please, and he just has not been good. And it's just the reality. All right. At the end of the day, other guys that probably could be taken off of the roster, I think that there are some pieces that we haven't even seen here that are probably not going to be up here, and only will replace any injured players. It might be possible that they it might be possible that they take like somebody like Grant Hartwig, like they bring him in maybe if there's an injury or something. I don't know who the next man up would be for an injury, because we've seen injuries in the postseason before. Let's not forget that historic injury in 2015 with Ruben Tejada. Was it Reynolds who came up to replace him? I think it was him.
Yeah. And Flores started.
Yeah, and then they had that big move. Again, we got to see what happens with Jesse Winker, because I feel like that's something that we could add on here for a second.
Yeah.
Jesse Winker
I did see him
not
celebrating like crazy. Nothing's wrong with his arms because he was celebrating like crazy. But I thought second game of doubleheader with how many veterans they have, I really feel like he should. I want him to get the ABs in since he's been struggling. He's facing a right-handed pitcher. I want to see him get it going because I would like to use him as one of our only lefty bats we got. And I feel like with his personality, he could step up in a big spot. I could just see him having like one random big hit late and just going crazy
happen.
Jesse Winker status. But if he's not getting the reps, not the ABs, the rhythm, he's cold right now. I was just very surprised, especially like Nimmo to play two games. Marte to be out there again. Bader with his injury history played 2 games. Taylor, I was surprised. Like there was a lot of guys that could have used a rest there, and I just thought it was a golden opportunity. You could get free at bats at a game that didn't mean anything to get him going. So I feel like there has to be something there. There has to be.
Yeah, I don't.
And
know.
even
Maybe
you
it's
said
just
you
the
would
fact that he's
pinch hit for
struggling.
Winker when Bader was up in the second time with runners on base. It was a golden spot.
Yeah, it was. So they didn't go to him. Obviously, he has been struggling, but that's probably the main reason as to why. But you have the flexibility of the 28-man roster where you probably could like put out an odd man out and don't make everybody available, and have that flexibility, of course, because they do have a deep outfield. Let's just say that. And I think that whenever you talk about it, I think it's the best way to look at it. I think we do have a question in here from Ian saying, any thoughts on Alonso's spot in the order? I feel like we need to get him going somehow and make a change in the lineup. Could that help do that? I think I mean, if I were answering this straight up, I think that we're just so far along now that like this is what it is right now. Like that's really what he's done, and if he does come through, great. But I'm not really expecting him to do so. I just am not. I really am not. And at the end of the day, I really don't know, if he actually could contribute. Because if he does, maybe we do have a different conversation in free agency. But you never know. All right, so we have our first caller coming in here. We have I think he just disappeared. I don't know. If he's watching the stream, you can come back if you want to.
That's a good question.
But right there, I feel like at the end of the day with Pete Alonso, it's probably going to be defined by how he does perform in the postseason. I really do think that at the end of the day, he's run out of options. Like he really has. And we talked about it before with him rejecting that offer, 7 years, 158 million. That's a pretty hefty sum compared to what he's going to get in free agency.
It reminds me a lot of Conforto saying no to the money, and then the agreement never could be made, and he didn't get what he wanted. I could see, and it's not going to be the same extent because Alonso's
also a Boris client, same thing.
But I mean, we've seen, Chapman eventually got his money, but Belly didn't, and some others didn't as well this past offseason. So I certainly could see it.
It's another Scott Boras arc on the Mets food chain there.
What do we think about? They had to expend a lot today, both bullpen and position players. I think with the celebrations they had, I think adrenaline will prevail, and they're so pumped that will kind of make them not feel as tired, that they're so excited to be there that they want. Because that's one thing I kind of want to talk about. Do you remember? I know Alonso said they didn't really celebrate in 2022 because they thought they were going to have another celebration. I was surprised to see Lindor crying because this is a guy who's been to the World Series with Cleveland. I did not expect to see the emotion of these guys to get the wild card spot. I know it was a tough battle. They were 11 games out, player meeting, but this was a lot for these guys. I mean, they are on a
with
high
Lindor,
right now because
he almost didn't make it. Like he almost didn't get to play on the field with us. I mean, when you think about it, it wasn't looking good for like a week, And like, I feel like that's probably the main reason as to why. Now, obviously, it seems like it looks like he's healthy. It looks like he's fine. Yeah. To me, he looks fine. Maybe there was a little bit of pain or whatever, and it worked out. And hopefully, I mean, I don't know. I think that, it was quite a battle. It was rough. It was an uphill battle. And listen, in regards to Pete, again, we'll have more of this talk in the offseason because it will be a topic.
And Pete already has so many charity and organization things that he does in New York. I feel like you're able to kind of make yourself a bigger star in New York, even if you took less money, just because of the marketing opportunities that are available for you, that you can make up that money elsewhere as well. So, there is something to be said of a homegrown guy. Do you want to take maybe like a homegrown discount, short-term discount, something like that? I think it's something to consider. I mean, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, because what it comes down to, especially, let's say he took a short-term deal with another team, we still need to see him step up in a playoff game. I mean, that still needs to happen. So I feel like other teams have to think of that as well, as like, okay, well, this is a guy that we've seen in the biggest spots in September is when it matters, doesn't come through. So a lot of teams have to be monitoring that. So it's not only a big series for him, but all the other teams that may have interest in him, like a Houston, like Andrew mentioned Houston, they DFA Jose Abreu and they took the money and said, you know what, forget it. Houston's always in the playoffs. They're in it again, and they might be one of the favorites in the American League right now. So they need guys who step up in the postseason. They can't, because they're going to be there. So they need Alonso to contribute.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, I want to, I think that the postseason probably be something that is defying for some of these upcoming free agents, and we have a lot of them coming up. I think that, and we will have, once the season is over, whenever they get, eliminated or whatever, maybe, after they're on a World Series float, who knows what's going to happen. But we will have, a segment where we're talking about stay or go with a lot of these free agency guys. And there's some guys that I've made decisions on right now, but maybe it does change. I don't know. But I think that, so mutually there's some guys that we would let go no matter what. But, at the end of the day, for those of you who want to call in, we'll give it about 10 or 15 more minutes for those of you who do want to. We have the link pinned on our channel. I think Frank has it on his. We have it on our Twitter chat as well. If you want to call in, it's okay. We don't bite. Don't be shy. If you have to communicate through sign language, we can make that work. But for those of you,
it's pinned.
Yeah. So for those of you who want to call in, if we don't have any callers in, then we'll figure it out. Again, it is pretty late right now. Maybe some people are trying to get some rest before the postseason because there's going to be 4 games tomorrow. I'm pretty sure, right? And as for postseason coverage, we may not be talking about it as of right now as much, but we are going to be talking about it tomorrow. We have a pre-game show that will be at 4 o'clock, which is 90 minutes before first pitch. And we will have a post-game whenever the last pitch is for Game 1. Win or lose, no matter what. If they get killed, if they kill them, if it was just a complete slug-off, I mean, any result, we will be live. And that will be, as well, the post-game will most likely be another podcast episode that will be out on audio. We will not have the pregame show out on audio. So for those of you who want to know our pregame thoughts, want to, expose our old takes or something, you're going to have to do it on YouTube and watch it in the past. Post games I feel like are just the best way to do it for that because you have more reactions and more material to go off of. All right, so it looks like we have our first caller. For those of you who are calling in, we're only doing audio for this. We don't have any video available. So we have Gabriel coming in. Gabriel, can you hear us? You want to, what's going on? You want to ask us some questions? Anything you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? I've been a fan of the show. Haven't missed an episode in a couple months now, so pretty cool.
Thank you.
We appreciate
pretty cool to get. Yeah, of course. I love your show, guys. I love how you guys give honesty. I think sometimes the media, not necessarily cover up, but tend to sugarcoat things a little bit. I like the honesty that you guys give, and I love Carson, your insight on a lot of the analytical side of, especially like pitching stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. But
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, what a series. I mean, what else can we say? I mean, we went into Atlanta. It's the house of horrors for the Mets, and to come up the way that Lindor did. I mean, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm a bit biased, of course, but in my opinion,
so are two of the co-hosts here. You can guess which two are the one who's white as snow and the other two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's on track to becoming one of the best shortstops, not just, of course, in Mets history, but of all time. It's incredible to see him go out there and do his thing every day. But I wanted to ask you guys about your confidence in the pitching staff in this Brewers series, just because, I mean, we all know the Brewers kind of have our number. And when you look at this Brewers team, it's kind of like a complete version of what David Stearns, wants to build here with the speed, the defense, where they're just pumping out pitchers, whether that be in the rotation or the bullpen. So the fact that they just have so much pitching to throw at us, and they kind of seem to have us figured out, especially on the base pads. What are you guys expecting as far as not only the pitching, but any potential adjustments that Mendoza and Stearns could make?
All right, Andrew, I'll let you take this one. What do you think about the pitching staff?
I mean, I think we've brought it up, especially for Game 1. You're going to be shorthanded, but I think definitely now in the playoffs, you could probably see a Tyler McGill in that bullpen role. Especially again, we have Maton down in this, and he won't pitch tomorrow. But I think definitely if they get past the Brewers, which again we should focus on the Brewers. I mean, if Luis Torrens is kind of has to help at this point, like I like how Frank brought up earlier that like. If Diaz isn't watching in the run, which he never seems to do, obviously Adam Ottavino, we've historically known takes like 97 seconds to get to the plate. I mean, also having Torrens behind the plate helps that with his arm. Do I think there's definitely adjustments? Again, the Mets rotation isn't heavy strikeouts, and again, that's a team in Milwaukee that loves that small ball, 1990s bunts, walks turns into steals, and they can produce that runs. You're going to need Sean Manaea to come out with his best stuff and strikeout stuff because that can eliminate those base runners if you get swing and misses. Obviously, not having Diaz and Maton, who are two of your better swing and miss relievers, kind of sucks. Having to trust Reed Garrett and, Jose Budo, who obviously Budo can walk the ballpark, and double steals can easily be taken care of, and you're putting yourself in high leverage situations right away. But I think definitely, again, having this series and seeing them, like, there's a difference, and we would have thought Schwellenbach would have been different. Seeing them again, like, there needs to be an adjustment from what happened 2 days ago in that series. If Jeremy Hefner, yes, there's people that want to give him all the credit. We shit on him enough. But if he is, and this is kind of a Jeremy Hefner legacy series, make the adjustments to fix this rotation. You've seen him less than a week ago. Can he make the adjustments to help these pitchers get back, eliminate the walks, control the base pass? And if that is, again, like we said, with Luis Torrens behind the plate and Alvarez at DH, that could be something. But definitely in this series, you got to limit them off base runner, because especially how these guys are going to run wild. You have to limit the base runners, and that's been kind of an Achilles heel throughout the whole season for the Mets pitching.
Yeah, I have a few adjustments I want to see here. So number one, I would consider, if you're not going to do the thing of DHing Alvarez and starting Torrens, you do have to consider bringing Torrens in as a defensive replacement late in the game, especially if somehow Ottavino is going to pitch or Diaz is out there. Like, if you have a guy that really struggles controlling the run game, you need the good guy that stops the run game behind the plate. The other thing I want to see, Milwaukee leads the league in infield hits. I want to see Mark Vientos play more in. They're going to be bunting. The number 2 hitters, they bunt if the leadoff man gets on. I want to see them play for the infield. Let them beat you with the power. I mean, if Adames and Contreras and Hoskins are going to do that. But everybody else, I want them playing in. No cheap hits, no infield hits, because those infield hits turn into doubles, ground ball, third base, sacrifice fly. That's a run. So I want to see them adjust to that. The other thing they have to focus on, Milwaukee does not chase. So Sean Manaea, he had those couple of walks in that first outing he had. He gets to face them again. We talked about with Manaea, what also got him good was pounding the strike zone. They have to attack the strike zone, because they're not going to overwhelm you with talent. They're not overwhelm you with power. Don't give them those free bases, because, again, the walk turns into a stolen base, into a ground ball, into a sac fly, and then that's it. So I need to see those kind of adjustments to kind of trying to counteract what they do well. Like, they're not gonna chase, attack the zone. They're gonna steal, you got to play for the infield hits. Like, you have to know what is that they do well and make adjustments based off that.
Yeah, I mean, we've really based off of 6 games that we have played with the Milwaukee Brewers. They run the bases fairly well. They play fantastic defense. They know how to situationally hit. The only guy that I possibly would not pitch to is probably Rhys Hoskins, to be honest. I would pitch around him, to be honest. And I know that he wouldn't be a real big stolen base threat as compared to some of these guys in this lineup. It all really has to do with the rhythm. If they are in a rhythm, if they have it or they don't, and that also is going to put more pressure on Carlos Mendoza, and we're going to see from a first-time manager, when does he pull the plug? And I think that that's the main thing that you're going to look at when you're talking about the confidence level in this rotation. If they do go to somebody like Jose Quintana, I would say the plug needs to be very, very short.
I think they have to, based off days of rest. I think he has to get game 3.
Yeah, obviously. Based off the games of rest, it probably will be short rest. Again, they are in a situation where, maybe guys are not going to be in that comfortable rest. And, we talked about it, of that, like, player safety and player health and keeping guys in here for an extra day. With Kodai Senga coming into the mix, it would have been like a 6-man rotation. So you would have these guys rested. Right now, you don't have that luxury. So I think that you have guys in the bullpen you've burnt to get into this place. You do have, 3 different games that you could possibly play. And I think that at the end of the day, it really just all depends on rhythm. It's either they have it or they don't. We have seen Severino have it. We have seen Severino not have it. We have had Sean Manaea blow up. We have seen Sean Manaea. We have seen Jose Quintana blow up, and we have seen him have grooves as well. He's had a very inconsistent way down, and hopefully, again, it's kind of a blessing and a curse in that way with David Peterson. If you were to put him into one of these games, who has pitched very well, they saw him just a few days ago. So, that maybe they start to have the book on him. Who knows? We have definitely played this Milwaukee team before. The only thing that you're kind of worried about is the offense, and that's a whole different thing, where you did not face any of their top pitchers that they saved for this series. So I think that right now it all really just has to do with rhythm. Gabriel, thank you for calling in. That was a really good question. Thank you for being polite, not acting like a jackass. That is very nice of you because we have had things like that in the past. And that's definitely the way to do it. You definitely set an example for a lot of people who think they should call in the future. So thank you for calling in. Anything else you would like to say? You have about 15 seconds and we're going to have to let you go.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate you for acknowledging that I set a great example for callers moving forward. But no, thank you guys. I'm gonna keep listening to the show and keep up the hard work.
All right.
Thank you.
And for those of you in here who are watching who want to call in the future, that's how you do it. See, just being, just having a casual conversation. You don't have to act like an asshole. You don't have to just be extra animated. You don't have to say stupid shit. That is for Andrew to do. Now, so we will give about 5 minutes for anybody else that would like to call in. I know we had somebody else come flip in and out if he wants to give us one last try at it. And then I think we will call it for the day. But I mean, that's a good conversation start no matter what of how you would look at the rotation and the confidence, because we already knew that you had questions coming in and out. I mean, with this rotation starting off from this season, and you really hope that they can extend it to a point where, you go into the postseason where, that's a different stage of the season that we haven't seen for a while. We know that Luis Severino has pitched in the playoffs before. We know that Sean Manaea has pitched in the playoffs before. Hasn't bode well. Jose Quintana has had a decent playoff career. We know he has. David Peterson has not pitched in the playoffs once. I don't think so.
No.
Tyler McGill, no. So no, I think maybe Peterson pitched like an inning in mop-up duty. I don't know.
I think he did in the San Diego. Yeah,
he might.
San Diego, maybe.
He came out of the bullpen. Yeah.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. But again, this is they're going to be going on the road, so maybe it's a tough atmosphere. Maybe it isn't. We don't know if Milwaukee is as crazy as it is at Lambeau Field during their playoff runs. But again, that's a good team. We have faced them 6 times, and it's going to be quite the matchup. And we'll get into a lot of those details going into tomorrow for the pregame. We're going to have to rest up first before that comes in. But again, I just quite a season just to wrap it up here. For any final thoughts, I mean, just quite a roller coaster. And it was nice to see it as compared to when we're talking about something like 2019, which a lot of people like to flex as the cream of the crop of this franchise. We finished the job this time. They actually finished the job through 162 games. They finished the job. It may have been tough. It may have been a rough sequence. And we may have faced some adversity that maybe at one point would have knocked other Mets teams down. But at the end of the day, they were the top 6 team, one of the top six teams in the National League in positioning. And they're going to October, which is just exciting in general. I mean, it's awesome. No matter where you play, it would have been nice to have it at Citi Field. But, Dumpster Dave has got to do better than this if he wants to play at Citi Field, Andrew, what do you think? I mean, I think it's at this point, he let us down. We didn't get our 90 wins.
Yeah, facts. We didn't hit the 90 win float. We didn't get the bonuses. So, but again, yeah, it starts again like I started the show today. It's enjoyment because we all know how that's, especially because the Mets had a third of the last game. I think right because the Padres had a late game, so we got to sit through 2 games beforehand. So again, tonight, I'm running on jet lag and sleeping on a sofa bed the last couple days. So I'm fucking exhausted. And then the game, add to the fact. So, again, the road to potentially one more of these. This has been sitting on my desk. You got to win a lot of games to add one of these. And, hell, the way the magic that this team and this season's been, you couldn't tell me, hey, how especially up the ups and downs, Grimace, Seymour, Wiener, Hawk 2, all this dumb shit. Why not end it with some jewelry? Because why the hell not? Baseball doesn't make any damn sense. You got in the crapshoot, the MLB playoffs. Doesn't matter. The best teams don't win. It's who goes in hot. And I can't think of a better way to go into the playoffs. Obviously, exclude the second game. Nobody cares. We were all drunk and high when we weren't even watching. But the way that first game ended, there's no better way to go into the playoffs than that first game.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you're talking about records in September going in hot, I'm trying to get the stat muse pull up here. I believe the Mets had the second best record behind the Tigers, who the Tigers are another team. I mean, what a story. Let's just say that. This ain't a Tigers podcast, but I mean,
it helps when you have the White Sox and then the Twins just dying, but they did.
Yeah,
have a great.
true.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Old
I mean, a
man's
lot
got-
went their way.
Can't go any positive. This is a positive podcast, Frank. Goddamn. Take the break.
You know,
just
I
saying,
mean,
listen,
from both sides,
if
there
we
was
could
a
get it-
debate.
If we could have gotten in with 86 wins, we wouldn't have stressed these. We wouldn't have had to play this doubleheader.
Well, I'm sorry that
I mean, they're frauds. Yeah, exactly.
Frauds? Yeah.
No, but what I'm
But good for them.
What I'm saying
No,
is
'cause it's been
that-
a long drought for them, so no, good for them.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, we had like the kind of thing that had pushed us over the edge. We can talk about the Jorge Lopez stuff, the Grimace stuff, everything that you can talk about during this season. But in parallel to a Mets and Tigers type of thing of both of them getting into the playoffs, I think they're both the final wild card spots. We had this debate of Javier Baez versus Jeff McNeil or whatever 2 years ago. Both of them went down, and both teams excelled right afterwards. So I think we figured out, who the problem is in that clubhouse. Is it Javier Baez? Is Javier Baez more of a problem? We'll know if there's one of those that win the World Series. Who knows? Whoever goes farther, we'll figure it out.
And then Jeff McNeil dies, and we've got more ample replacement. We replaced him with a little midget, and he hits like 9 homers, so it's all good.
We'll see how they. I am actually interested to see how they utilize Luis Angel Acuna as well too.
He's a guy that if you want to do the defensive replacement, putting him at second, put Iglesias at third, you want to take Vientos out instead of Eddie Alvarez. I mean, you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, moving it even further than that, when you're trying to face a Brewers team, like trying to outspeed them, I mean, that is one of the key guys to put in there. But you have to get him on base first. Has he stole a base yet? I think.
Nope.
I don't think so.
I want to see the speed, man. Give me the
I
speed.
mean, if somehow JD Martinez gets on Leon base, he's pinch running, so he'll have. He hopefully has a chance.
I mean, I think that Luis Angel Acuna can replace the speed of Eddie Alvarez. I mean, I think we would be good, right? I mean, I don't. Who knows? I mean, I know Eddie Alvarez is like Terrence Gore fast, but I think that you could get more to provide. Yeah, and it's all right-handers. I'm pretty sure that
Peralta,
Milwaukee's gonna probably roll out there.
Savali and
Chevali. Yeah, looking at the Brewers, it probably will be Peralta game 1, right? I mean,
do we see Frankie Montas again?
Frankie Montas.
Montas?
That's weekly legend.
Frankie Montas? I mean, I don't know how that really lines up because they've
go watch Brewers
Weekly.
weekly.
He pitched Friday, so
Freddie
he'd be in
Peralta.
line.
Yeah, Peralta's going game 1. That's what we got to worry about first. Then we worry about everybody else. And so
Peralta's damn good. Let's just say that.
Always love him.
We'll save that for the pregame. I'll obviously have some scouting notes throughout for this one as well. And we'll be back here tomorrow. And for those of you who want viewer call-ins in the future, let us know. We might do them for the post game tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe it might be after the series is done. We'll do that. I do want to do it more of an off-season thing. But our guy Gabriel, he was definitely a very fine fellow. Let's just say that. Very nice. Final words, final notes until tomorrow, which we will be right back here. This is our second live stream of the possible 8 that we would be doing in these next 5. So if you're looking for content, it's right here. Check it out. And this is a 2.5 hour episode, obviously going a little bit longer than usual. Usually it's 2 hours. But the Mets decided to clinch in Atlanta, so we decided let's add another half hour to the show. Frank, I'll go to you. Last comments going into possibly bed for you.
Oh, definitely, for
at
sure.
your age.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty close to bedtime. No, for me, I want to see what the playoff roster is so I can have my overreactions, yell a little bit, and then we'll do that on here tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, we need a big start from Severino. That's what it comes down to. He needs to step up. Bullpen is shot. He's been in the playoffs before. He wants to get paid like an ace again. You gotta have an ace performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew?
Yeah, again, to celebrate the power of positivity, go in. Let's go clap their cheeks. Let's kill some demons. Think about it. Think about it. 2015. We didn't win the series against the Cubs. Guess what? We didn't win either the series against the Brewers this year. Let's whoop them. Then we'll go whoop the cheesesteak looking motherfuckers. Then we'll go to the Dodgers, and then we'll beat the Royals in the World Series. Revenge for 2015. Let's get positive. Let's go Mets.
Oh my gosh! Imagine.
Hit or dab.
If
Let's
that
go.
happens, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm just done. Like I can't. Like we've had discussions about guys like Salvador Perez before, but when that dude comes to the plate,
Welcome.
I mean that's like a Freddie Freeman, Marcelo Zuna,
Rhys
like
Hoskins.
combined.
Jones, Willie Stargell.
Pat Burrell, Rhys Hoskins, like
Aaron
that
Rowland.
that type of level, but all combined. Like that dude is a scary dude. I'm not gonna lie, he's scary. He can do some real damage.
Just
All right,
welcome.
not gonna lie. Is he a good catcher? No, but
Yes.
as a hitter, dear Lord, I mean, just wow. Anyways, this isn't the Royals. This is about the Mets. That's a American League team, and that is going to be long down the line. Tomorrow, like I said, Game 1 pre-game show at 4 o'clock. Be there, or you will be square, and we'll laugh at you and make fun of you. And hopefully, we can continue the good times, as today, the Mets, once again, clinching the NL wildcard. They will be facing the Milwaukee Brewers in the first round. So they go from Atlanta to Milwaukee to Atlanta to Milwaukee again. Quite a week for us. Lots of craziness of events. And it all has come to a close into the next stage, which is October baseball. For those of you who are watching live, thank you so much for watching. For those of you listening on audio in the future, for those of you watching on playback, for those of you who are in here for a little bit, for here for the entire show, we appreciate you so much throughout the entire regular season. Thank you guys so much for all the support. And we're just going to keep going until, we are, 6 feet underground. I mean, we're just going to keep going. That's going to be closer in timeline for Frank, but, we'll keep pushing through. But other than that, new podcasts, they will be coming out as the post-game shows after the games, and then most likely once a week during the off-season, but we'll let you guys know as that gets closer. Tons of content coming in the future. And make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. To be honest, I low-key want the playoff roster to come out, and Frank does a TikTok about it just to scream into the camera. I just feel like that would be awesome before we get into the stressful games. But we'll find out if we can do that. Follow everybody individually. And I don't have to say including our third Mike, because he made it. He finally decided to show up. That was great. I'm glad that you finally decided to show up. But other than that,
Rally
But other
cap your
than
bars. I don't know. Figure something out.
I love it.
Okay.
There we go.
But other than that, as we have said every single time, and we continue into October, let's go Mets, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.